our standard practice.
Although it's a little weird. Excuse me? Excuse me, if I could have your attention, please, for just one moment. Hello, everyone. If I could have your attention for just a moment, please.
Folks.
Excuse me, just one moment.
Mr. Lateef has a question for the audience.
If we have any Boy Scouts in the audience, this is what we do at regular meetings, who are working on their any participation badges, if they'd like to see me at the end of the table, if you are a Boy Scout in the audience here observing the meeting to earn a merit badge, please come to me at the end of the table. Thank you so much. You may continue speaking.
Good evening, everyone. If I could have your attention, please. Good evening, everyone. We have a very full house tonight. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate you being here. This May 7th, 2015 regular meeting, number 19 of the Fairfax County School Board will now come to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, a moment of silence, and the performance of the national anthem by the Falls Church High School Guitar Quartet under the direction of Jacob Walker.
Madam Chair, I just wanted
Yes,
to
ma'am.
say thank you so much to the Falls Church Guitar Quartet. I think that was one of the most unique renditions that we've heard, and absolutely beautiful. It was wonderful that Mr. Walker was able to perform with his students as well. So thank you so much to the quartet.
Oh, there was a teacher up there. He looks so young. Yes. How lovely. How lovely. And yes, for all of you here, you can see the amazing arts programs we have here in the county, and it was just beautiful to hear them. The board has a very full agenda this evening that includes several issues. At the onset, I would like to remind all those in attendance to act with dignity and respect for all present. Please refrain from outbursts or cheering, for it is not appropriate in this context. Those who engage in disruptive behavior will be asked to leave. Please do not approach the dais. While the public is invited to listen to tonight's proceedings, we ask that you not interrupt our meeting, as it is our business meeting tonight. I thank you very much, and now a few more announcements. The board held a closed meeting earlier this evening and certified compliance immediately upon reconvening in the public forum work session, which preceded tonight's regular meeting. If you would like a copy of the agenda and any agenda item that is being discussed tonight, that information is on the table by the auditorium entrance. You may access tonight's agenda and related meeting documents by going to the FCPS website, selecting School Board, and then upcoming meetings and agendas. The meeting is also being streamed live on the FCPS website homepage. Click on Watch School Board Live. Please turn off or silence your cell phones. And I will now call on Mr. Lateef for announcements.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And now for the real reason you are here. It is Children's Book Week, May 4th through the 10th. Children's Book Week, a national celebration of reading, storytelling, and book-related events, observes its 96th anniversary in 2015 and is the longest-running national literacy initiative in the country. Established to promote higher standards in children's books, the week grew to involve librarians, publishers, and booksellers, and is administered by Every Child a Reader, a 501c3 literacy organization dedicated to instilling a lifelong love of reading in children. Nationwide, author and illustrator events take place each year, and the Children's Book Choice Awards, the only national children-chosen book awards program, are announced during the week. We also, we have Boy Scouts in the audience. We'd like to welcome Boy Scouts in the audience from Troop 1523. They're based out of Annandale, and they're working on their Citizenship in the Community Merit Badge. There they are. Also, we announced this at the last meeting, but it is Teacher Appreciation Week, so thank you to all our dedicated FCPS teachers. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 2.04, the FCPS Excellence Awards, and I call on Dr. Phyllis Pijardo, the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
Good evening. So, as you heard, I'm Phyllis Pijardo, Assistant Superintendent for HR. You can call me Dr. Phil for the next few minutes as well. I am glad that we have so many folks being able to be here to see some wonderful folks we're going to recognize tonight. Tonight, we honor the winners of the Individual and Collaborative Team Excellence Awards. These awards celebrate the efforts and achievement of employees whose job performance provides exceptional results supporting the FCPS mission and vision. By using nomination categories based upon the school system's goals, we can recognize multiple pathways to results. The available award categories are impact, student achievement, community engagement, and growth. This year we had 49 nominees. 7 individuals and 16 team members were chosen to win the award, and they are here tonight with friends and families so we can recognize their outstanding work. And they're seated right here in the front of the audience. You can clap for them. So let's present the awards. We'll bring the winners up based upon the award category. Once we have individuals and teams from that particular category, we'll assemble for a photo. At that point, we'll have supervisors to come up, we'll have region assistant superintendents or department assistant superintendents to come up for the photo opportunity as well. School board members, would you join folks? Would you join us on the steps here? Dr. Garza as well, join us on the steps for the photos, for the presentations and the photos. Are we ready? All righty. Our first category is impact. These honorees show outstanding responsiveness, customer service, or customer satisfaction, while enhancing efficiency or effectiveness through innovation, cost savings, creativity, or problem solving. Our winners in this category are 4 individuals from 3 sites. First, we have an art teacher with a love of art and of her students, and it's reflected in the outstanding quality of the instruction she delivers. And we also have a network security specialist who creates a safe and secure technological environment for our students and our employees. The awards go to, in the impact category, Linda Ledbetter, art teacher at Rocky Run Middle School. Come on down, Linda. And the other award winner in this category is David McKell, Network Security Specialist at Wilton Woods. We have 2 more folks to recognize in this particular category, and then we'll have the photo op. In this category, we have 2 employees from the Office of Design and Construction in Facilities and Transportation. One is a field construction representative who is always willing to tackle difficult projects with highly successful results. And the other, a field custodian supervisor who is a vital member of the staff due to his leadership and dedication to the projects he manages. I see right before me Jock Owens and John Swain. So supervisors, program managers, department assistant superintendents, and the appropriate region assistant superintendents, come on down. Thank you for making your way down. Got a couple of more folks coming on down. Great. We've got a moving target here. Great, thank you, congratulations. Again, those were winners in our impact category. Next is our student achievement category. These employees help students realize their full potential by closing achievement gaps, measuring progress, implementing interventions, or engaging students. The winners in this category are members of a Cat B collaborative team who work tirelessly to meet the individual goals and needs of students in the autism program by using effective, data-driven instruction and assessment practices. They clearly demonstrate that given the proper support, all students can learn. The awards go to the members of the Rocky Run Middle School Cat B team. And they are Ashley Africa, Jenna Bailey, Casey Bills, and Michael Leonberger. And is that Rosie that's here? And Rosie. And that's our student achievement category. And so Rocky Run Middle School administrators and yep, come on down again. And our region office. Again, that was the Rocky Run Middle School Cat B team. Our final category tonight is growth. These honorees contribute to the development and improvement of programs, services, or curriculum. They foster staff effectiveness and professional development. We have 3 individual winners and 2 winning groups in this category. Our individual winners are a 2nd grade team leader who led her CLT, or Collaborative Learning Team, to become one of the most high-functioning teams at their school. And we also have a physical therapist who is committed to improving the program and the services it provides to our students. And we have a math department chair who helps implement strategies and initiatives designed to overcome the challenges encountered in an ever-changing educational environment. Let me introduce you to our winners. Carrie Gaffoni, 2nd grade teacher and team leader at Virginia Run Elementary. Connie Johnson, physical therapist at the Allen Lee Center. And Linda Johnson, math teacher and department chair at McLean High School. Also in this category of growth, we have collaborative team winners. And they are from a pre-algebra team with a common purpose and determination to learn from each other and to help all students succeed. And we have a history team that truly exemplifies the innovation and interdependent workmanship needed to increase student achievement. The award goes to the Herndon Middle School Pre-Algebra Collaborative Learning Team, and they are Rachel Dar, Lauren Golden, Karen McDonald, Emma Newhall, and Amanda Vaughn. And our last team is the Twain Middle School History Collaborative Team. What a fine-looking team. And we have Andrew Bishop, Matthew Bauer, David Foss, Eric Henderson, and Mary Sullivan. So would our region administrators and principals and program managers from Herndon Middle School, Twain Middle School, Virginia Run, Lee Center, and McLean come on down? So we'd like to thank all who took the time to nominate these exceptional individuals and team members, as well as for coming out and showing your support. We love hearing all of these county success stories. We just love this as well. And we're all truly thankful to our honorees for using their talents and their energies to advance the goals of our school system. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Phil.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Next on our agenda is recognition of National Adult and Continuing Education Week, and I call on Ms. Hines.
This is a great pleasure for me to read this announcement. The Adult and Community Education Program of Fairfax County Public Schools began with an action by the school board in 1955, and in the 60 years of the program's existence, thousands of adults have learned essential skills and completed their high school educations. Through the years, adults have learned new languages, acquired job skills, transitioned to new careers, and grown as workers, citizens, and parents. The Fairfax County community has looked to ACE to help develop our workforce, provide solutions to community problems through education, and create a culture of lifelong learning for residents of all ages. Adult and community education has made major contributions to the school system as a laboratory of innovation for the piloting of new programs and services in support of pre-K to 12 education through family literacy, summer programs, extended day programs, enrichment courses, and driver education. Through creative programming and targeted advocacy for the adult learner, as well as providing enrichment opportunities for youth beyond the school day, ACE has helped to create a dynamic learning community for all generations in Fairfax County. I would like to invite all attendees in the audience who provide adult and community education services to the FCPS community to please come forward for a photograph with the board.
Next on our agenda is the resolution honoring the 50th anniversary of Frost Middle School, and I call on Ms. McLaughlin.
For those in the audience who don't know, Frost Middle School is in the Braddock district and feeds into the Woodson High School pyramid. This is exciting for me to honor their 50th anniversary because I am the wife of a 1980 graduate and the mother of 3 boys who recently came through Frost Middle School. So very excited. Whereas in 2015, Frost Middle School will proudly celebrate the 50th anniversary of its founding and its reputation for providing students with an excellent academic foundation so that they may embark on their futures fully prepared with the critical thinking skills, global and environmental awareness, ethics, sense of citizenship, and compassion to solve problems and make difficult decisions in an ever-changing world. And whereas over the years, Frost Middle School has been a model of academic excellence and has attained many academic accomplishments, including the Virginia Governor's Award for Excellence in 2010, 11, and 12, and 14, as well as the Virginia Board of Education Distinguished Achievement Award in 2013, the Golden Wellness Award in 2013, the Healthier U.S. School Challenge Bronze Award, the Virginia Music Educators Association's Blue Ribbon from 2009 through 2013, and recognized for the ASCA Model Program designation in 2015 by the American School Counselors Association. And whereas Robert Frost Middle School works collaboratively with Parent-Teacher Association and a committed local community to provide a safe learning environment, strong communications with its families, and opportunities for service learning and extracurricular activities to enhance student educational experience. And whereas Robert Frost Middle School stresses the acquisition of skills that will lead to success and offer a multitude of programs serving a wide range of student abilities and needs, an advanced academic center, honors courses, and a wide variety of world language courses. And whereas thousands of students have passed through Frost Middle School's doors and benefited from a comprehensive education and a smooth transition to high school as a result of the efforts of dedicated teachers and staff in a nurturing and positive environment with the support of school leaders and involved parents. Therefore be it resolved that the Fairfax County School Board honors Robert Frost Middle School on the occasion of its 50th anniversary and commends its history of providing excellent education and enrichment opportunities to students and our community. I so move.
Seconded by Mr. Moon. All those in favor? The motion is unanimous.
At this time, I would like to invite our principal, Eric McCann, and his staff and administrators, and anyone else from the Robert Frost community to please come forward to the risers for a photograph and a presentation of the resolution.
Our next order of business is citizen participation. Speakers, please limit your remarks to no more than 3 minutes. We will adhere strictly to this time limit, so when your timer goes off, please leave the lectern and return to your seat. The school board will not hear statements involving issues that have been scheduled for public hearings, such as capital improvement program, budget, or boundaries, or personal attacks on any person. Complaints regarding individual students or school-based employees should be directed to the appropriate school principal or other school official. If the concern is a group concern, please consider appointing a spokesperson, and while the spokesperson is speaking, those in support may stand to show their support. Tonight, 10 citizens have signed up to address the board. Yuan, Alexandra Dixon, Joshua Israel, Gordon Bear, Stephen Hunt, Melinda Kelly, Keith Appel, Matthew Kelly, Emma Chatham, and Fredy Burgos. So if we will first begin our first speaker. Yuan, Yen? Right over there, ma'am. And ma'am, your timer is over there.
Dear board members and honored guests, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this issue. I'm not a native speaker, but I feel the urge to stand here and speak because I'm a mother of 2 young children. I feel strongly against this proposed change to Policy 1450. First, we believe this policy is not respective of parents. Unanimous broad acceptance of this policy change has not been formed. I'm standing here on behalf of more than 200 families who signed my online petition strongly against this policy. A controversial change proposed 1 day after the board was given authority to make this change has led to the question, what's the rush for? Has the board given parents sufficient time to consider the implications? Is this a responsible approach toward a critical policy change? Second, has the board obtained objective evidence that the policy change can reach its intended results? There are other states or counties that have implemented a similar policy. For example, is there data to show the proposed policy will lower the suicide rate of transgender students? Could the results even show suicide rate is higher due to more publicity, controversial, or social stigma? If there's no evidence the policy will work, again, we raise the question, what's the rush for? Lastly, little children are very sensitive and vulnerable. My 7-year-old girl insisted she locks her bathroom door because even mommy cannot see her in the bathroom. She had no idea her right will soon be deprived here. There is reasonable concern that this policy change by design has deficiency that leads to the pass. Any male who claims to be a female may access female-restricted resources. Some claims teachers are not immediately allowed to use the student's bathroom at this time. What about in the future? What about the parents? Statistics shows 0.26% of the population are sex offenders. This opens door to about 3,000 sex offenders that will potentially not be stopped immediately when they access female-restricted area. Think about the poor girls who will become victim of this policy. In conclusion, this policy is ill-designed. It's not respectful of parents. There is no evidence it will work. It will increase sex crime to little children as young as 5-year-old. Stop this proposal. Do not hurt our children. Thank you.
The next speaker, I ask you to be respectful of our time, and I ask you to be respectful of our speakers. Thank you.
Esteemed school board members, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak tonight on the issue of Policy 1450, updating the FCPS non-discrimination policy to include the words gender identity. I want to start off my comments by talking about my values. I'm a Unitarian Universalist, and our first principle is that we affirm the inherent worth and dignity of each human being. This policy does that. I also value the lives of transgender children and gender nonconforming children. 41% of transgender people will attempt suicide. This policy may help prevent some of those suicides. Some will say that by changing this policy to include gender nonconforming and transgender individuals will put peers at risk. To date, there has never been a case of a transgender person hurting another person in a bathroom. Meanwhile, using the bathroom while transgender can be risky. Many gender nonconforming people and transgender people are physically assaulted in bathrooms, they're bullied or emotionally abused. This policy updates an existing Fairfax County public school policy to protect all Fairfax County public students and employees. It is something that has been done in hundreds of cities without negative consequence. Tonight, you have a choice to stand on the side of equity, compassion, and justice. I urge you to protect our transgender and gender nonconforming students and employees and pass Policy 1450. Thank you.
Joshua Israel, followed by Gordon Baer.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Josh Israel. I am a proud Fairfax County resident. I am here this evening to commend you for considering an important non-discrimination proposal and to wholeheartedly encourage you to enact it tonight. This policy sends an important signal to all of our teachers, students, and staff, particularly those who are transgender, that they need not be afraid. They need not be afraid of being penalized for expressing themselves in a way that's consistent with their gender identity. They need not be afraid of losing their job for reasons apart from their qualifications and performance. And they need not be afraid that we in Fairfax won't embrace and support everyone. Contrary to comments made by some legislators from elsewhere in Virginia 2 weeks ago, this move is entirely within the power and responsibility of this school board. Attorney General Mark Herring's recent advisory opinion rightly noted that Article 8, Section 7 of Virginia's Constitution makes it clear that the supervision of each school division is up to its school board, including protecting the safety and welfare of students and supervising personnel. He wrote that you unquestionably have the power to protect LGBT students and employees from discrimination. The series of AG earlier advisory opinions that those out-of-town visitors brought up had absolutely nothing to do with school boards and everything to do with county boards and city councils who must follow different rules. Though this is an important step for our community, it is hardly unprecedented. The federal government already includes gender identity in its non-discrimination policy for the federal workforce. The McAuliffe administration protects every Virginia state employee from gender identity discrimination. So too do the majority of Fortune 500 companies, 19 states from Maryland to Utah, and every single federal contractor. Moreover, large school systems comparable to Fairfax, like Los Angeles, Miami-Dade, and even our distinguished superintendent's former home of Houston, Texas, have all had policies like this in place for years without incident. The sky has not fallen. Indeed, it has helped these places attract the strongest workforce by sending a message of inclusion and diversity. Poll after poll has shown the strong majority of Americans and Virginians believe we should be all free to work and learn without facing discrimination. I hope you will stand on the right side of history tonight and unanimously send the message that everyone in our community will be treated with dignity and respect for who they are. Thank you for your time.
Gordon Baer, followed by Stephen Hunt. Mr. Gordon Baer. Mr. Stephen Hunt.
Good evening. Since you have my written statement and why I disagree with this change, I would like you to hear from Mr. Casey Maddox on a legal summary.
I am Casey Maddox, a father of 2 daughters in a Fairfax County elementary school and senior counsel for Alliance Defending Freedom. Yesterday, we sent a more detailed analysis to the board explaining why the proposed policy violates students' and parents' rights. Instead, we would encourage the board to adopt the model policy we have provided that would address any concerns the board is trying to resolve without compromising student privacy and safety. I just want to hit a couple of points that I think would be of most interest to the board now. First, I understand that the district may be getting pressure from the federal government to adopt this policy. I want to make clear that no federal law requires public schools to allow boys into girls' restrooms or girls into boys' restrooms. In fact, just a few weeks ago, a Pennsylvania federal judge rejected the argument that federal law requires this. In Johnston versus University of Pittsburgh, a case involving a woman who identified as male and sought to use the men's restroom, the court summarized its ruling in this way. This case presents one central question: whether a university receiving federal funds engages in unlawful discrimination in violation of the United States Constitution and federal and state statutes when it prohibits a transgender male student from using sex-segregated restrooms and locker rooms designated for men on a university campus. The simple answer is no. The court undertook a thorough analysis of Title IX and the relevant case law and found that a transgender student had no legal right under the federal Constitution or Title IX to access the bathroom that corresponds to their stated gender identity. On Title IX, the court said, having carefully reviewed the relevant language of Title IX and the applicable case law, the court finds that plaintiff has failed to state a cognizable claim for discrimination under Title IX. Simply stated, the university's policy of requiring students to use sex-segregated bathroom and locker room facilities based on students' natal or birth sex rather than their gender identity does not violate Title IX's prohibition of sex discrimination. So let's be clear, the bottom line. No federal statute or case law requires the adoption of this policy, and to the extent the district is receiving pressure from the federal government to adopt this policy, it should know that as with most bullies, there's absolutely nothing behind it. They are bluffing. The nation's courts have rejected those claims. In fact, Title IX, as most of you know, and as our explanation, the letter we've delivered explains, expressly permits this. Finally, as a parent, I have been pleased that Fairfax County has respected the role of parents, allowing us to have sensitive discussions about sex and sexuality with our young children and not subverting the parental role. My wife and I were able to choose to opt our 9-year-old daughter out of sex education, to her great relief, I will say, and have those conversations with her ourselves. In fact, that respect for my role as a father and my wife's role as a mother is why my children are Fairfax County public school students. It inspires parental involvement and trust in our teachers. This bill would eliminate that trust for our parents, and I urge you to oppose it.
Next on our agenda is Melinda Kelly, followed by Keith Appel.
Thank you for the privilege to speak. I'm an obstetrician gynecologist and a mother of 2 students in FCPS for 10 years. I first want to say that I don't believe there's a person in this room who wants to see any student, including transgender students, bullied, harassed, or treated with disrespect. If this is the main issue, then we're all on the same page. I know you want to be the first to show that you care, but when you push too quickly and there's not full understanding of what you're implementing, it can cause more problems than what you're trying to solve. Your proposal is to add gender identity to your non-discrimination policy, but I want to read to you from the American Congress of Obstetricians and Gynecologists' latest committee opinion on transgender identity. It states, there's no universally accepted definition of the word transgender because of the lack of agreement regarding what groups of people are considered transgender. In addition, definitions often vary by geographic region and by individual. They go on to name 6 different groups that may or may not be included when you use the words gender identity. So just as Ms. Reed asked at your March 12 forum meeting, are we covering everybody? You haven't defined that yet. The medical experts haven't defined that yet. And so in your effort to include groups, you're going to be constantly adding words to your policy and never covering everyone if you continue to divide us instead of unify. Adding words to a policy that has already been enforced by your staff is not going to make students treat each other with respect. Practical, hands-on character education in our schools will result in real change. This is the real solution I'd like to see the board discussing. I know each school reports to their superintendent on paper and in committee what they do for character education. However, actual time spent with the students. Teaching and applying character education varies tremendously among the schools. I've volunteered in 5 FCPS schools. I've been to many ethics days. I've helped with character education for 9 years. At Colvin Run, I've watched Colvin Run kindergarten teachers teach the big words of compassion and honesty and respect and responsibility to 5-year-olds in terms they could understand and apply them in the classroom and literature and service learning until they become common language. Every grade level in that school has their own service learning project, so that by the time they send the students to middle school, the majority of 7th grade students at Cooper this year created their own service projects for others. This is not 8th grade required service hours. This was of their own choosing. And why? Because it was ingrained in their character from the day they started school. This is what changes a community. This is what stops bullying and harassment and replaces them with respect and compassion. And this is what I would like to see the board discussing. Has this happened in all FCPS schools? Unfortunately not. At 6th grade ethics day, student groups mixed from different schools are asked to rank order a set of character traits. Several students didn't know the meanings of the words. How can we expect them to act with integrity when they don't know what the word means? These weren't ESOL or special needs kids, and I worked with both these groups, and character education can be done in any language and made appropriate for any level of development. But they need resources. Couldn't collaborative time be spent on schools sharing their character education resources and ideas? Please vote no tonight. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Keith Appel, you're already at the podium, followed by Matthew Kelly.
Madam Chairman, board members, I'm just a proud father of 2 precious girls who are thriving in their kindergarten and 1st grade classes in a Fairfax County public school. The teachers, administrators, and staff of this school have worked tirelessly to make their learning environment one that is affirming, encouraging, and safe. I'm a strong advocate for public schools. Why on earth would you want to turn me, along with countless other parents across Fairfax County, from advocates into adversaries? There's something fatally wrong with a school policy when the very teachers who would have to work under it have no idea what it is. My daughter's 1st grade teacher had no idea about this policy when my wife asked her about it just a few days ago. There's something fatally wrong with the school policy when well-meaning board members cannot answer some of the most basic questions about its implementation. There are numerous ramifications that haven't been thought through on the front end, and that is a recipe for disaster. When a policy this controversial isn't thoroughly debated with full parental involvement, when it's rushed through with so many questions unanswered, that leaves the door open for the law of unintended consequences to wreak havoc. We all agree all students must be treated with compassion, care, and tolerance. My board member assures me that this is happening right now on a case-by-case basis and can easily continue to do so, and there have been no complaints. Instead of rushing forward, we should be thoughtful and smart. We should move deliberately to be a model for the country in demonstrating that tolerance is and always must be a two-way street. If tolerance isn't a two-way street, then no tolerance exists. Deliberation means discussion and debate, transparency and inclusion. That's the way to achieve a Fairfax solution. That's the legacy any public servant would be proud to leave. But if we rush this and let the law of unintended consequences wreak its inevitable havoc, as short as I'm standing here, there will be incidents that will leave all of us sorrowful, regretful, embarrassed, and angry. These incidents will include teachers as well as students, and there'll be a permanent stain on the legacies of all who vote to rush this through. You can prevent that tonight by being smart on the front end and adopting Ms. Schultz's amendment to take some time with this. I urge you to keep me and all of us as advocates and not turn us into adversaries. I think I speak for all parents in saying that I am the proud father of 2 precious girls who are enjoying their time in school. I am very protective of them. That is my nature, and I will never apologize for it. Thank you.
Matthew Kelly, Matthew Kelly, followed by Emma Chatton.
Thank you. Members of the school board, my name is Matt Kelly. I have 2 children who have been through FCPS. I'm here tonight as a parent to express my strong support for these proposals to strengthen the district's anti-discrimination and anti-harassment policies to include protections for gender identity and expression. These improvements are overdue and necessary. One of the great things about Fairfax County is that this is a diverse, tolerant, and inclusive community, and our public schools reflect that. I believe that the vast majority of the FCPS community does try to treat everyone with dignity, respect, kindness, and understanding. But there's no question that there is still work to be done to combat ignorance, prejudice, and injustice. One area for improvement is our treatment of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender members of our community. It's a sad truth that LGBT people, and transgender people especially, still face far too much misunderstanding, stigma, and outright bigotry. That prejudice is why the problems of homelessness, substance abuse, and suicide remain unconscionably high among LGBT youth. Too often, transgender or gender nonconforming students feel unwelcome and excluded at school, a place where they should feel safe, included, and respected. These proposed policies are a step towards improving that situation. Much more needs to be done, including training for FCPS employees and age-appropriate education for students. But the proposals on the agenda tonight are an important and necessary first step. I urge you to enact these proposed changes because it's simply the right thing to do. It's just wrong to discriminate against people for characteristics that have nothing to do with their value as human beings. Race is one of them, religion is another, so is sex, and so are sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. A fact that's often overlooked is that these policies protect everyone, not just those who are in the minority. Protecting gender expression, for example, will protect the girl who wears dresses every day just as much as the boy who does the same. There's also a very practical reason to enhance the district's policies in this manner. It's the fiscally and legally responsible thing to do. The law is clear. The Justice Department, the Education Department, the EEOC all agree discrimination based on gender identity or expression is illegal sex discrimination under Title IX, under Title VII. And don't let anyone mislead you. Most of the federal courts to treat this issue, including the Ninth Circuit, have come to the same conclusion. Therefore, enacting these enhancements to FCPS policies is a step towards ensuring that the district doesn't get caught up in unnecessary, costly, and embarrassing litigation. A student shouldn't have to sue the school district to enforce their civil rights. Neither should the district wait until it's been sued to enact policies protecting civil rights. And by the way, enacting similar policies is one thing that the Education Department consistently requires of school districts that illegally discriminate against transgender students. To summarize, as a citizen, as a taxpayer, as a voter, and most especially as a parent, I urge you to pass these enhancements to the district's anti-discrimination and anti-harassment policies. Thank you.
Emma Chatton, followed by our final speaker Fredy Burgos.
The only way I will rest in peace is if one day transgender people aren't treated the way that I was. They are treated like human beings. Fix society, please. Those are words from Leila Alcorn, a 17-year-old transgender girl, in her suicide note, December 14th, 2014. To the board, you have the opportunity to begin the work of fixing society by clearly communicating to our students, teachers, staff, and parents that the only acceptable way to treat each other is with respect and compassion, like human beings. My name is Reverend Emma Chatton. I work with the Metropolitan Community Church of Northern Virginia, where I co-lead Transformation Ministry. In this capacity, I also co-facilitate a group called Fourth Friday, a closed group for the parents and guardians of trans, gender-expansive children, tweens, teens, and young adults. It is incumbent on our institutions not only to keep up with things, but to be prepared for them as they happen. You already have kids like Leila, trans-identified and gender-expansive kids in our systems. What your vote has the potential of doing, if you vote to make the existing policy current, is to help give equal protection to those kids. You can begin to fix things. And I have met some of these kids. They know who they are, and they are so incredibly, brilliantly brave. And I challenge you to be just as brave in protecting them. So many in this room have been gender transgressors at one time or another. Consider the girl who takes shop class or the boy who takes home economics. Think about the bullying that some of these strong kids are subjected to as a result of who they are. Living life outside of the circle of acceptance is incredibly hard, and bullying is the most childish form of discrimination. This will not be tolerated, and it needs to come from the top down. All I have heard from those opposed to this idea is fear. One thing I can assure you of.
Excuse me, please do not interrupt our speakers. Thank you.
Is fear. One thing I can assure you of is that this nation has never moved forward on fear. Nor does this grant any special protections, but rather it simply ensures that everyone in our school system receives the same respect that every human being deserves. This is also not a matter of affirming something that you may not even believe in. The fact is, these kids are already here. I'm just asking you to keep up with them. The issue is simple. This is about respect and respecting differences. Your vote in support of these kids will go a long way toward the establishment of an environment of respect for all people. Be as brave in helping to keep these kids from discrimination as they are in living their lives authentically. In the words of a very brave girl, fix society, please.
Mr. Fredy Burgos is next, and I understand Mr. Gordon Bear is here, so Mr. Burgos and then Mr. Bear will be our last speaker.
Thank you, Dr. Garza, School Board. My name is Fredy Burgos. I am a father of 3 daughters, and I am concerned with the proposed change to Policy 1450 to transgender our schools. The school board should be making decisions to improve math, reading, writing, science, and U.S. history, not making decisions on political social engineering. We as parents and the school board must work together to improve education, discuss programs that open the door to more choices for parents, empowering parents the right to choose the public school that works best for their own child, to have a happier learning environment. The attempt today is to undermine the First Amendment rights of students by institutionalizing that boys and men can dress like girls in school, establishing that nobody can voice their objection or disagree with a political class. We must fight together against the gangsters and bullies of the federal government. The U.S. Department of Education is trying to strong-arm our school board into accepting the radical position of transgender rights by threatening the school board with the loss of federal funding. This gangster tactics is anti-democratic. We as parents will stand with you, the school board, if you do the right thing and vote no to the change. We will fight the U.S. Department of Education, the real danger to our children. Serious consequences will come from this change. Children with the mental illness of gender identity have a 50% suicide attempt rate and will have had at least one suicide attempt by their 20th birthday. This is nearly 9 times higher than the general public. As they continue as adults and decide to mutilate their genitals, suicide attempts go up to 75%. Trans people are infected with HIV 4 times higher than the general public. This public policy change is not for the well-being of those who need psychiatric help. The school board isn't seeking psychiatric help for people with the illness, but asking them to embrace a suicide illness. This will lead to the endangerment of the students with the illness and other children around them. This is a distraction to education and endangers the entire school. The decision to allow children to display their transgender mental illness doesn't improve education. All children will be affected by the distraction because of family and economic stresses at home. Many minority children don't learn at home. At school is where education is received, and unnecessary distractions will be catastrophic. The bottom of the achievement gap, Hispanics and blacks, will be the most affected. Most Hispanics and blacks are Christians and will have difficulty to accept the abnormal behavior of a transgender. The distraction of a transgender will lower test scores, increase the dropout rate of Hispanics and blacks. Changing Policy 1450 is racist, anti-Hispanic, anti-black, anti-Christian, anti-First Amendment, and anti-democratic. Because of Judeo-Christian values, the majority of the families and children live in a still intolerant community. To keep that The intolerant gangsters of the United States Department of Education
Mr. Burgos, your
are the
time has
bullies.
expired. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Gordon Bear.
Okay, hi. I'm Gordon Bear, and I'm the co-chair of GLSEN Northern Virginia. And I started being co-chair 2 years ago, right after I graduated from West Potomac High School. Go Wolverines. Wolverines? Okay. I did this because I love the community I grew up in, and I saw some problems with it that I could try and help to solve. Because as proud as I was to receive an education from Fairfax County Public Schools, I was fully aware that many of my peers and I graduated in spite of the fact that half of our mental capacities weren't going towards learning science concepts, math concepts, history. They were going towards battling threats and prejudice within the school itself. In a lot of ways, my personal experience was far more tame than those who are gender nonconforming. 8 in 10 LGBT students in Virginia reported hearing negative remarks about gender expression regularly, and only about 5% of those reported that their schools had comprehensive anti-bullying policies. The fact is that a hostile climate detracts from academic performance. It's an issue not about bathrooms so much as it is about classrooms and the quality of an education a student gets in Fairfax County Public Schools. As someone who has been in the trenches for 12 years and came out so very confused as to why I was treated that way and had to go through that and do all these other things, it's debilitating. It's debilitating to learn under those conditions. Now, I believe that every student should go to school without fear of bodily harm, of harassment, and regardless of how they identify with their gender. Fear detracts from a quality education. So I ask you, as an individual and as a member of GLSEN Northern Virginia, to implement Policy 1450. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our speakers tonight, and we also allow video testimony, and we will see one video tonight from Robert Rigby, Jr.
Good evening. My name is Robert Rigby. I want to tell the story of a hero of mine, a young man who graduated from a Fairfax County school a few years ago. He cannot tell the story himself because he passed away a few years ago. I've spoken with his mother and have her permission to tell the story. His name is Brian Piccone, and he and his brother attended Falls Church High School. Brian didn't identify as transgender, instead as gay, but we might describe him as gender nonconforming. Brian dressed in boys' clothes, but he wore makeup, painted his nails, and joined the cheerleading squad. Brian met a spotty reception from staff for the way he wore makeup. One supportive teacher was a bright spot for him and shared makeup tips. Other teachers, including a closeted gay teacher, told him to tone it down because they thought it was unseemly. There was harassment from other students, including some shoving into lockers and a threat to his brother and a break-in at his home. School was a scary place for Brian, but he persevered. After the harassment, the principal became more supportive, allowing Brian to help start a gay-straight alliance. As a member of the cheerleading squad, Brian wasn't allowed to participate in the same dances as the girls, it being too provocative. He brought up Title IX on his own to the coach, and that rule changed. though his makeup and nails weren't permitted while he was performing for the school as a cheerleader. They did win the district championships while he was on the squad. Brian graduated with honors and went on to being a community leader at George Mason, fighting for social justice, not simply for LGBT people, but for everyone. As I said, the story has a sad ending. Brian passed away a few years ago of a sudden asthma attack. It was a great heartbreak to us all. For my part, Brian is my hero. His courage in being out, in being open, in being fearlessly nonconforming at Falls Church made the school a safer place for me to be openly gay when I went to teach there during his senior year. I have this to say. The students in FCPS have been changing the atmosphere and culture in our schools for years, taking risks, forming clubs, educating the community. It is time for us as adults to do our part to make FCPS a welcoming place for all people. Thank you for listening.
Again, thank you to all of our speakers. Next, ma'am, I ask you to please sit down. We have rules and we have a decorum. You sit or we will be escorted out. We have 10 speakers. That is our rule for our business meeting. This is not a public hearing. This is not a public hearing. Ma'am, ladies, I ask you to please respect. This is a business meeting. This is a business meeting. No. Next on our item is student representative matters. I call on Mr. Lateef.
Thank you. I also have a right to speak. Chairman Dernat Koufax, Dr. Garza, members of the school board, in the interest of time and an interest in giving everyone a time to cool off, I will not be discussing the proposed changes until we get to the action item. So you get to hear about something else. What a 2 weeks this has been. Since our last regular board meeting on the 23rd, I've been to 6 different schools, attended 8 hours of meetings and events, and we've met the spouse of not one but 2 different heads of state. Starting on Friday, May the 24th, on the invitation of Principal Ann Smith, I visited and toured the Key Center School in Springfield, Virginia. The Key Center is a complete special education center which serves students with intellectual disabilities and autism. By FCPS standards, it's on the smaller side with around 120 students, but they range in age from 5 to 22 years old. Only 21% of Key Center students have verbal language skills, and 49% are ambulatory. So the Key Center is very unlike any other learning environment I've visited during my time as student representative. It was inspiring to see firsthand how passionate Principal Smith and her faculty and staff are about what they do. They are truly making a tremendous impact on the lives of their students and their families. I encourage all board members to visit the Key Center if you have not done so already, and I thank Principal Smith for taking time out of her busy day to speak with me, show me around her amazing school, and introduce me to many of the Key Center students. On Saturday the 25th, I attended the awe-inspiring annual spectacular, that is the FCPS All-County 6th grade choir concert held at Mount Vernon High School. I was joined by Mr. Moon and Mr. Stork. We very much enjoyed it, and if you've never heard a choir of nearly 1,000 6th graders all singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, it's quite the experience. Could probably use them here right now. Wouldn't that be fun? On the 27th, I participated in the Student Leadership Development Program's mock work session and then the school board's budget work session. Coming out of that, and after speaking with many of my own teachers, I would definitely agree with the option presented to the board that consists of a step increase for the 96% of employees who are eligible for one, along with a 0.62 market scale adjustment for all employees. Thank you. I think it is obvious that this board and the leadership team, however, would have loved to do more when it comes to teacher and employee salaries for FY 2016. But when you live in a county with a board of supervisors and when you live in a commonwealth whose state house just doesn't seem to value our schools as much as they both claim they do, this is the best we could do. Last Tuesday, the 28th, I ventured back to my formal school of Great Falls Elementary and attended the visit of First Lady Michelle Obama and the spouse of the Prime Minister of Japan, Ms. Aki Abe. It was an honor meeting both Mrs. Obama and Mrs. Abe, and I thank Great Falls Elementary and Principal Mr. Lynette for having me. They not only have an amazing Japanese immersion program at Great Falls that has hosted, among others, the Emperor and Empress of Japan, the Japanese Ambassador, and the now Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Thanks to the support of their PTA, they actually have a 1-to-1 technology ratio in grades 3 through 6. They installed a maker space and project-based learning as alive and well, something we'd like to highlight here at the school board. Last Thursday, I visited Lake Braddock Secondary, and on Friday, I was over at Woodson's leadership class. This past Monday, I headed over to Langley's traditional sports rival, McLean High School, for a visit, proving that despite our differences, we can all get along. Poignant. Although my final meeting, I wrote this before I knew this was going to happen. Although my final meeting with the school board is just over a month away, we have a lot to look forward to together. Namely, this Saturday, we're holding the second annual Fairfax County Public Schools Community Conversation on Teen Stress, which will be held at Hayfield this Saturday again. I've had the privilege of being on the committee that has worked to plan the summit over the last several months, and I thank Dr. Dockery, Dr. Lipp, and Dr. Baylor for spending so much of their time working on such a worthwhile and important event. Something I'd like to highlight that will be taking place at the summit this Saturday at 8:30. The very start of the conference, thanks to the generosity of President Steve Greenberg of the Fairfax County Federation of Teachers, we will be having a particularly interesting panel featuring the Senior Assistant Dean of Admissions at UVA, the Director of Undergraduate Recruitment at Longwood, the Director of Student Services at Chantilly, and a Pathways Counselor at Northern Virginia Community College, who will discuss the stress surrounding college admissions and the mental health resources available to students after they've made the transition from high school to college. I encourage parents of rising seniors who are about to enter the fray of college admissions, take the time out of your Saturday morning, take them over there, it'll be fascinating. Also, Ben Press and I will again be hosting our very own breakout session at 11:15, where we will have a candid conversation and Q&A on the student's perspective on teenage stress. You can find more information online at fcps.edu/dss/summit. I'll be at the public hearing on the budget next Tuesday, and next Wednesday I will be at Carl Sandburg Middle School on the invitation of the Stratford Landing and Carl Sandburg PTSAs for a screening of the 2010 educational documentary Race to Nowhere. As for school visits, in closing, I have just 4 left before I can say I've been to each high and secondary school in Fairfax County as student rep. I'll be at Lee next Wednesday, James Madison that Friday, and I have visits to Herndon and West Potomac in the works. Thank you, and now back to our regularly scheduled programming. Thank you.
We begin our action items with the first one, 4.02, 4.01, Policy 1450, and I call on Mr. McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the school board adopt Policy 1450, non-discrimination, as detailed in the agenda item.
Second. Seconded by Mr. Moon. I now call on Ms. Schultz. You have a motion? Oh. Mr. McLaughlin, I understand you don't want to speak at this time. All right. Ms. Schultz, you have a motion.
I move to postpone Policy 1450 until the second school board meeting in October 2015.
Again, I ask that this is a business meeting. I understand you're all here in support of one side or the other, but I do ask that you respect the fact that this is our business meeting. Ms. Schultz, please continue.
I move to postpone action on Policy 1450 until the second school board meeting in October 2015 so that the board can be provided the commensurate draft regulation and handbook language and determine the overall impact of the proposed revision to Policy 1450.
Is there a second to this motion? Ms. Schultz, you may speak on your motion.
Before the board tonight is a main motion which has generated more spontaneous public discourse and commentary than I believe in the history of Fairfax County Public Schools. The motion to defer or postpone that main motion is offered for substantive, critical issues which deserve the full due consideration and unanimous support of all of my colleagues. Whether a class of students with gender-related issues may hurt individuals in the bathroom is not the issue before this board tonight. It is about the right of 99.7% of all students, all teachers, and all employees to retain their right to privacy, safety, and dignity. How those rights of all students, all parents, and all employees are respected and protected has not been addressed by this board. There has been no information provided to this board about the scope of the issue regarding the number of FCPS's 186,000 students this involves, the scope of the issue regarding the number of FCPS's 40,000 employees this involves, the regulations which may be involved about who is responsible for navigating the issues, most importantly at the classroom level, and the impact that this may have on stress and workload for our educators who are already stretched to their maximum in so many respects. We have no information about the practices that FCPS currently carries out and does well or does not do well. We have no information on what safety and security issues exist now in FCPS's 194 school buildings, countless administrative buildings for all employees. And although I am a mother of 4 boys, I have deliberative concerns for your daughters, your granddaughters, your sisters, your aunts, your wives. Your wives and your mothers. Happy early Mother's Day, because after all, I am each one of those. In seeking information about what this policy may mean, and that was inordinately and surprisingly difficult, not because of the lack of ability on the part of a highly competent FCPS staff, but because of the lack of the very existence of the information I sought on your behalf, my significant concerns begin with our budget. Significantly in the face of an $8 million budget shortfall, which has not yet been resolved for fiscal 16, and facing a $100 million shortfall for fiscal 17, there is absolutely no information about the potential cost of outcropping of any of this policy decision, including staff development, facility modifications, staffing needs, and more. In a division that has cut nearly $500 million, it is fiduciary malfeasance on the part of this board to undertake passing any policy without understanding the germane cost associated with any such action. Speaking of money, the latest development of this board being faced ostensibly with a mandate from the federal government that this school board, like FCPS, the 10th largest school system in the United States of America, is being forced into policy language development under the threat of having federal education monies yanked is simply unconscionable. That the federal government, via the Office of Civil Rights, under the U.S. Department of Justice, through the U.S. Department of Education, could is compelling individual local school boards around the country or risk losing federal education monies like Title I funds designed for the neediest children, most at-risk students, hungriest children, is unconscionable. Is my federal government, the Department of Justice, the Office of Civil Rights, and the U.S. Department of Education really threatening me as a duly elected local official who has sworn an oath to the Constitution of Virginia to run this school division in accordance with Virginia Code, requiring me to run it with utmost efficiency, quote unquote, to do their bidding by inserting gender identity or any other language into our policies or face taking our children's lunch money? There are 14,000 school divisions in the United States of America. What about the 90,000 other school board members? Do I have a right to run this school division as a locally elected official under the Virginia Constitution by the people who elected me? The federal government is telling me no. There are serious concerns about not having regulations and understanding impact for policymakers like the 12 of us sitting here who have to run the Fairfax County school system. If we do not understand germanely and with compassion how to respect every student, every employee, and most of all, every parent's rights who have entrusted us to educate your children. We have to delay this vote.
Mr. Stork, would you like to speak to your second?
I respect the right of all board members to make amendments and motions, and in that light, I was willing to second her motion, even though I will not be supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Ms. Reed.
Thank you, Chairman Annette Koufax. Apologize for being late. I was at another meeting, and I had every intention of seconding this motion. So. Y'all may as well get comfortable. It's going to take a little while. I've been on this board for 6 years, and I've used a level-headed, analytical approach to make informed decisions. I also care deeply about our students, employees, and members of our communities. It is with these same qualities that I approach tonight's vote in which the Fairfax County School Board will decide on whether to expand its non-discrimination policy to include gender identity as a special protected classification. As we know, this policy not only impacts students, but also teachers and employees of the school system, which is the largest employer in the Commonwealth. I don't know if you know, but this issue also has been proposed to be added to our SR&R, Student Rights and Responsibilities, tonight as well. So if that catches anyone by surprise, we'll be talking about that again later. Ms. Schultz and I didn't compare notes, but you might hear a few common themes. I took an oath of office that states I will faithfully and impartially discharge all of the duties incumbent upon me as the Providence District representative to this school board. It is my job to be objective and to consider the views and interests of everyone I was elected to represent. I also have a responsibility to govern and to lead. I want to first thank everyone that contacted those of us who received hundreds and hundreds of emails. Those of you who are in the audience and outside and watching on TV. We've received an incredible amount of feedback on this issue. People feel very passionately. I've read the emails, I've had conversations, I've asked lots of questions of staff. I met with Logan, a transgender student, and I talked with my sister-in-law about her April, who is now AJ. It is important for me to make my decision-making transparent. Whether you agree or disagree, at least you will understand my thinking. In summary, I want to reinforce the message we teach every day in our schools, that all students should be free from discrimination and harassment so they can feel valued and achieve their full potential as students and future members of society. I believe our current policies might do this. My support in postponing this decision is not about compassion or rights of one segment of a population. It is about whether our board is being responsible or foolhardy. Frankly, the process we've used to get to this point is troubling and embarrassing. I have so many fundamental questions that remain unanswered. Some answers were coming in as late as 2 and 3 o'clock this afternoon. If the board can't answer these questions, then a vote is clearly premature. Now, being the good analyst that I am going to take the time to identify what some of those questions are. Why is the board rushing to address this issue at this time? Why have we not followed our typical processes for policy development and implementation and public engagement, as outlined in our strategic governance manual? This issue was first raised at our forum on March the 12th, 2015. It was brought for new business April 23rd, and a vote is scheduled tonight, as you know, May 7th. We clearly have caught the public by surprise and not done justice to our established public engagement process.
Ms. Reed, please continue. Please continue, Ms. Reed.
And to prove that I have, in fact, read all these emails, I've also included some direct quotes from people. I won't use your name. But this adds flavor, and I think it's important to understand the comments that people are raising. Why has this not been publicized to parents? For a school system that is so good at keeping parents updated through email, Facebook, and other school resources, I was a little confused why I hadn't heard about this vote and why it was not publicized. I can only come to the conclusion that FCPS did not want the parents involved in the discussion. This week, our board has been pulled away from other important pressing business. We have not adequately honored our teachers during this Teacher Appreciation Week. Nor have we wrestled with how to honor our highest priority of employee compensation when we received $7.6 million less in our transfer request, let alone the $100 million plus shortfall projected for FY 2017. I have not heard about nor worked on closing achievement gaps or anything else that is a priority noted in our agendas or a strategic plan. Someone writes, I implore you to focus on the issues that are putting the reputation of our schools in jeopardy, such as budget shortfalls and less competitive teacher salaries. I would love to spend time working to improve these things in our schools rather than worrying about ad hoc policies that the board is trying to impose. Furthermore, to put this rush job in context, it took this board over 10 years of study to institute later high school start times. And near and dear to my heart, over 5 years to study whether to hire an independent school board auditor. It is safe to say that historically, this board rarely rushes into decisions. Question 2, do we have the legal authority to do this? The impetus to change and expand this policy was introduced by Attorney General Mark Herring in an opinion on March 4th, 2015. However, his opinion contradicts 8 other Virginia Attorney General opinions. These opinions all concluded that the Virginia General Assembly is the only body with authority to establish or change public policy to define classes for forbidden discrimination under Virginia law. Someone asks, have you considered the legal fees should you be sued for rashly following Mark Herring's opinion? I also asked the question, what interpretation does Fairfax County government take on this issue, and have not heard the answer to that. Other questions, and I apologize, colleagues, I warned you I was going to be lengthy. 3, is this change required, and by whom? What are the legal implications of not doing this versus the perceived threats of pulled funding? I won't cover that because Ms. Schultz did a very good job, and I'll spare you. Costs are another issue. This seems like it's an unfunded, I won't even say mandate, I don't know what it is. But what are the estimated costs to comply with this? And what exactly are we talking about? Is this change necessary? Someone wrote, is this even an issue to be addressed, or is it already a protected status? I don't know. The current FCPS non-discrimination policy prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation, and the Office of Civil Rights Guidance says that transgenders are protected under Title IX. Someone writes, through 200 years of precedent, our Supreme Court has determined that classifications such as race, gender, alienage, national origin, voting, interstate travel, and privacy are protected by the 5th and 14th Amendments. This is why I find it difficult for school board members to take it upon themselves to determine new classifications of students. Nobody condones bullying or discrimination. And this and this is not about some people mattering more than others. Someone wrote, I believe all students should be a special protected group, and their best interests should be evaluated in light of the uniqueness of each child by the individuals who know them best, their teachers, administrators, and parents. We're only on number 5, folks. What is the problem this vote is trying to fix? How are we going to do it? What is the current status in our schools? Can we cite any specifics about why this came about? Have there been incidents of discrimination? I don't know. Can we cite other schools that have made this decision, or any statistics? What kind of research have staff and the board done to get to this point? Have we done a literature search? Have we looked at case studies? Have there been community meetings and debates? And the big question really is, how will this be implemented? It seems like such a simple change on its surface, but what are the pros and cons of making the decision? What are the potential second and third order and more implementation effects? Have the implications of keeping the status quo versus making the change been thought through from all angles? Someone wrote, "It is not even clear about what the board will be voting on, given no regulations have been written for review and consideration." It's like writing a blank check. Do you write blank checks in your personal life? In conclusion, yes, colleagues, finally. Two citizens said it best. Quote, "Being in a position of responsibility, we expect our representatives to be prudent, informed, and judicious when casting their votes on our behalf." And lastly, someone wrote, "Please take time and study the issue. Remove emotions and strive for facts. If the board has not fully studied the issue, I urge you to stand up and be a leader and admit this publicly."
Ms. Reeder, please continue.
I urge my colleagues to support this amendment. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to Ms. Schultz's motion to postpone? I again just ask for your respect. Ms. McLaughlin.
Before I share my perspective on this, I would like to find our general counsel. Mr. Foster, I think one of the most important things that we can be doing first and foremost as leaders of this school system is to help provide important education about what we're doing here tonight. And first of all, as I understand, this is a policy update. We are not creating a new policy. We are not changing. It's not a new policy. It is not.
Ms. McLaughlin, I do ask that you do speak to the motion on the table, which is the motion to postpone. You can.
Yes, I know. I understand that it's about the motion to postpone.
Thank you.
But I think that in order for the audience to understand, at least for this board member, Megan McLaughlin, on why I am not going to support postponement, is that I want some information for the audience for people to understand some clarity here, because with all the respect that I have for every one of my colleagues sitting here at the table, there is definitely a difference of opinion about what information the board has, what we know, and why we may not believe that a postponement is necessary at this time. So, Mr. Foster, I had asked earlier that in terms of the existing policy as it is, where we do not have this additional language, is this additional language needed in order to provide the protection for our transgender population in the school system, in terms of protecting them from discrimination?
I've previously advised the board and provided you my recommendation, and that is, you understand what that recommendation is. The recommendation is that this policy be amended You're absolutely correct. As many speakers have noted this evening, we are currently dealing with transgender students in our schools. Our policy does not reflect that, okay? There's also been a recognition by many speakers, including the maker of the motion, Ms. Schultz. The federal government has been very clear that they expect local school divisions to amend their policies to include gender identity. Okay.
But as I understand it also, Mr. Foster, that Title IX does already provide this type of protection. So for this postponement, it gives the
Ms.
impression.
McLaughlin, again, we are speaking to the motion to postpone right now. You may speak on this later.
I understand, Ms. Darnell-Kofax. My point is, I think that there's confusion in the audience in terms.
Yes, I know.
All right. I will just simply share this. What I do know in extensive conversations with our superintendent and with her leadership team, I do not believe we need to postpone, because it is not about any change in practice. I have heard how we handle it. The misinformation about the fear that this will change bathroom practices in locker rooms and safety of our children is simply not true. And
all right, the motion is the motion on the table to postpone was, I move to postpone action on policy 1450 until the second school board meeting in October 2015 so that the board can be provided the commensurate draft regulation and handbook language and determine the overall impact of the proposed revision to policy 14. We've had a vote, we've had comments, we've had seconds. We will now vote on this. All those in favor of the motion to postpone? Ms. Schultz and Ms. Reed. All those opposed? That will be Moon, McElveen, Hines, Smith, Darnett, Kofax, Velkov, McLaughlin, Stork, Strauss, and Evans. The motion fails. We are now back to the main motion. We are now back to the main motion, and what I ask that you allow us to conduct our business meeting at hand. Again, please, right now, I ask for your respect. We are now back to the main motion, and excuse me. Mr. McElveen will now speak on his motion, and again, we must conduct this business this evening, and we will ask those of you who continue to shout at us to be removed from this meeting. Mr. McElveen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tonight we do have a slightly bigger audience than usual, and I would like to welcome you warmly, offer that to everyone to our meeting. For this,
okay, right here.
I would like to welcome all of you warmly to our meeting tonight on this debate on adding gender identity to our non-discrimination policy. Again, welcome to our house and our school system for a debate that is so incredibly important for the health and well-being.
Again, I am asking you one last time. I do have the ability to clear this room. If you would like to listen to what we are saying, then please listen respectfully. Please listen respectfully to what the board is discussing tonight at its business meeting.
Excuse me.
This is about all of us, sir. I am a parent in this school as well as a representative.
Chairman,
this is about all of us.
Chairman Darnat Koufax, if you would appoint, can I have a point of personal privilege?
No, you may not, Ms. Schultz. We will give you one more chance. We will give you one more chance to try, and then we will take a 5-minute recess. Because then, if we cannot conduct our business in the way we intend to, we will then have to clear the room.
I'm sorry, Chairman Darnat Koufax, with due respect, you must recognize me for a personal point of privilege.
Ms. Schultz, I will allow it. Yes, Ms. Schultz.
For the benefit of the people who are here to hear this argument, I'm imploring you want to be here for the discussion that's about to happen, because you need to hear what is about to happen. And I have a crystal ball, it's pretty good. You owe it to yourselves to hear what these people are going to say and allow them to conduct their business, and then follow on with any action thereafter. But if you don't let them have the meeting they're about to have and have the decision they're about to do, then you won't be here to hear it. So I ask for the extension of courtesy to my colleagues and Mr. McElveen, the courtesy I was extended to read my motion, to give him the same courtesy to finish his motion.
Thank you, Ms. Schultz. Mr. McElveen.
So again, I would like to welcome all of you here tonight for this very important debate on adding gender identity to our non-discrimination policy, a debate that is so incredibly important for the health and well-being of all of our children and employees in Fairfax County. For those of you who are interested in how our school board has arrived at this decision, and for those who may be concerned that this policy change might have arisen out of thin air, let me assure you that this board has been at the forefront of this cause for more than a decade. In 2002, this school board asked for an attorney general opinion on whether we had the legal authority to grant protections based on sexual orientation and gender identity. In March of this year, the Virginia Attorney General ruled that we can, in fact, protect our employees and students from discrimination based on gender identity. That brings us here tonight to finish the work that so many of our colleagues before us and among us have pioneered. Our Fairfax County Public Schools today are places noted for their inclusiveness, with students coming from every country in the world and speaking almost every language in the world. We do not tolerate discrimination, not based on race, not based on age, color, sex, sexual orientation, religion, national origin, marital status, or disability. And tonight we will declare that we do not discriminate based on gender identity either. The truth is, we already do not discriminate based on gender identity in practice, but that protection has never been clearly outlined in our policies, and its implementation has been left up to our well-meaning staff. So the purpose of tonight's vote is to reaffirm this board's belief that we value and accept all of our students and employees for who they are. In FCPS, we have an increasing number of students self-identifying as transgender and as gender non-conforming. These are our most vulnerable and at-risk students, and it's critical for our board to ensure that they feel welcomed and supported at the highest levels of our system. The rate of suicide attempts among transgender and gender non-conforming people is staggering. Whereas 4.6% of the overall US population has self-reported a suicide attempt, 41% of transgender and gender non-conforming people surveyed have attempted suicide. We cannot ignore these statistics, and we cannot lose one more life of a student who believes that they aren't accepted by their society or by their school system. Just imagine if these were your children. You'd probably do everything in your power to support them. As a board, And as a community, these are our children, and it's our duty to protect them. Unfortunately, in response to our effort to protect these members of our community, fear and distrust have been sown in our community. As a society, we never would have made progress if we had given in to unsubstantiated fears that we have heard tonight. The pioneering Marie Curie once said that nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood. In other words, the fears about this policy change are unfounded and need to be better understood. Fears we have heard relate to claims that, with this policy change, our practices will change, leading to a wave of students and staff self-identifying as transgender, allowing men uninhibited access to women's bathrooms and locker rooms, and encouraging teachers to cross-dress in the classroom. I cannot emphasize this enough. After we pass this policy tonight, nothing will change in how we handle cases of transgender and gender nonconforming students and employees. They will continue to undergo a thorough vetting process with school staff, as they always have, to ensure their claims are legitimate and made in good faith. This board has never received a concern regarding a bathroom incident of this nature. We have never received a concern about a transgender staff member, and we have never received a concern about a transgender student playing on a sports team. Never. This reflects how well our staff has handled these situations to date. In fact, a task force of our staff has already been working very proactively to ensure the fidelity of implementation of these practices at all of our schools. Finally, and most importantly, as you've heard tonight, we are in fact being compelled to make this policy change by the Office of Civil Rights of the Department of Education, which has directed all school districts in the United States to amend their non-discrimination policies to include gender identity. In this light, amending this policy is non-negotiable, unless we want the federal government to come after our federal funding. To conclude, I would like to speak about our role in history tonight. Many of you might not realize how the building in which we are gathered, Luther Jackson Middle School, relates to our discussion tonight. So let me explain. This school was named for the founder of the Negro Voters League of Virginia, and it served as the only black high school in Fairfax County. For years, black students had to be bused here, some taking hours to get here to receive their education. This year marks the 50th anniversary of desegregation of Fairfax County Public Schools. You might wonder why it took Fairfax County until 1965 to desegregate, more than a decade after Brown versus Board of Education, which declared state laws establishing separate public schools for black and white students to be unconstitutional. The leaders of our state organized massive resistance to desegregation and put us on the wrong side of history. Friends, 50 years later, we are fighting the same battles that our forebears fought. We are fighting the same battles that our forebears fought to provide equal access to our facilities for all of our students. The push for protections based on gender identity is the civil rights issue of our day. It is well past time for Fairfax County to be a leader on civil rights issues. Not delay this vote and relive our checkered past by putting ourselves at risk of legal action by the federal government, all while standing on the wrong side of history. I appeal to my colleagues as we gather tonight in this relic of our past injustices to search inside for our best selves in tonight's discussion. Selves that do not turn to injecting unwarranted fear and misinformation in our community. Selves that do not relive the civil rights mistakes of the past that drove us to Seneca Falls, Selma, and Stonewall, but instead envision Fairfax County but instead envision Fairfax County as Virginia's leader in proactively protecting all of its students and employees, no matter their gender identity. I am so proud to join all of my colleagues up here tonight after all the years it has taken to bring us here, to stand on the right side of history. And I am proud that 50 years from now, when a future board is debating the new civil rights issue of the day, right here in this room, our board will be remembered not for postponing, not for delaying civil rights, but for protecting all of our employees and all of our children.
As we move forward to our speakers, I again ask you to listen to what Ms. Schultz had said. Please, Mr. Moon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Mr. McLaughlin has spoken so eloquently on the need to make this policy update, I will not speak too long or repeat what he has already done. As we all remember, in November of the last year, after we learned that United States Supreme Court refused to overturn an appeal to avoid the same-sex marriages in Virginia, this board, by the vote of 11-1, passed my motion to add sexual orientation to our policy 1450. So that, please, do not, even if you agree with me, do not interrupt me. So that our school system does not discriminate anyone based upon that person's sexual orientation. The policy update had been a long time coming. As I remember, the school board, a number of years ago, discussed exactly the same issue, but was reluctant to ignore the then standing Attorney General's opinions, with the most recent one coming from the former Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli in 2010. Whether you agreed with the former Attorney General's opinions or not, they were the opinions that the school board at that time gave deference to. I am giving the same deference to the new Attorney General Mark Herring's opinion issued in March of this year, that the school board in Virginia have the authority to add gender identity in its non-discrimination policy. People may disagree on whether the Attorney General Herring's opinion was correct or not, but that is the Attorney General's opinion of the day, and I am going to give my due deference to it on the question whether this board has authority to add gender identity to its non-discrimination policy. On the need to add gender identity to policy 1450, I absolutely agree with Mr. McLaughlin that this is a civil rights issue. As long as you, whether an employee with us or a student, are not violating any of our rules or regulations, should never be discriminated based upon who you are. A student's right to education is a fundamental right, and that right should not be infringed upon based upon who that student is. Over the last couple of weeks, we have received, and I do not know exactly how many, but perhaps almost a couple of thousand emails on this particular issue. I have not been able to read all of them, but regardless of which side on this issue the senders of the emails were, almost all seem to agree that we should not discriminate against anyone based upon gender identity. Most of the objections seem to be based upon the fear, and I must say, the unfounded fear that their children and our students will somehow be immediately harmed by this policy update. But as Mr. McLaughlin pointed out, will not be changing that what we have always been doing. The school administrators will meet with anyone claiming to be a transgender and ascertain whether such a claim is supported by legitimate evidence, medical, legal, or otherwise. Our students do not need to fear, and I support the motion.
Ms. McLaughlin.
For those of you who don't know my history in this county, I am a parent. I'm in my 14th year with Fairfax County Schools. I have 3 children. Before I joined this board 3 years ago, I spent almost 10 years, like many of you, caring about our schools, serving on the PTAs, in leadership, becoming a parent advocate and a community advocate. I helped co-found the Fairfax Education Coalition back in 2009 with the expressed goal that we would improve this school system in its accountability, its transparency, and its community engagement. And that's why I feel so strongly about tonight's policy update, because that's exactly what it is. Regrettably, there has been tremendous amount of misinformation in the public. Every one of you who has sat here tonight, I have not heard you say that as of today, you have been worried about your children's safety. As of today, those of you who have children in our public schools, you have felt they are safe. And it's because they are safe. They were safe today, they were safe yesterday, and they will be safe tomorrow. So I would like to read for you something very important that I think speaks to the exceptional leadership we have here in Superintendent Garza, and what gives me confidence about this policy update in adding 2 words to confirm what she has already been doing, she and her administration. And as she has noted, we are responsible for all students. And while we sometimes have to accommodate students with varying needs, we can do so in a manner that is considerate of all students. We currently accommodate a few students, providing them access to the use of other facilities, like single-use bathrooms. We know that our administrators have done an exceptional job in meeting the needs of every child in the school. We know, as Mr. McLaughlin has noted, that there has not been a single case brought to the superintendent, to this board, about a child being uncomfortable, a child being fearful of their safety, of parents being fearful of safety. So keep in mind that what went from a simple policy update to confirm the practices that we already do in this school system, which I heard all of you championing, that we do not discriminate. That's all this does. It confirms what we have been doing so well, which is to not discriminate and to meet the needs of each and every child. I would also like to point out that one of our speakers who gave us some legal analysis, and what he did is he cited some federal decisions about the courts where they've rejected certain practices. What he didn't speak to is that they're not rejecting the policy update about the protection to not discriminate. So this policy update, I believe, reflects the values that we hold dear here in Fairfax County, which is we don't discriminate. We do not discriminate. Because of the reassurances in my communication with our superintendent, with the thoughtful leadership that she and all of those who have been part of Fairfax County for so many years and have kept this school safe for all students, I have every confidence that this policy update, what it does signal to our community and most importantly to our children, is to respect one another, that there is dignity in every single one of us. For those of you who are concerned about your children, I will tell you that in listening and speaking to our leadership team, they continue to work day in and day out with each and every family on any given issue where they are concerned about their child's welfare and well-being. And I would ask you to look at the facts. Unless you can point to where this school system in its current practices that this policy simply affirms, if you can't point to any problems that our practices have given to date, then you should leave tonight with confidence knowing that this school system tomorrow will continue to be the safe and outstanding public school system that you were here tonight to celebrate.
Ms. Hines, followed by Mr. Lateef.
Thank you. In this environment, I will go ahead and try to say what's on my mind about this and explain how I come out and why, for the sake of those who came tonight. I do want to thank Mr. McLaughlin for bringing this forward. I think it is something that we need to do. I can't add, I think the speakers so far in favor of this have spoken very eloquently, and I can't add much to it. I would say we have all been reading the emails. We've been doing our best to take them all in. I have responded to some who've written in, trying to understand better what the worries are. I won't use the word fear because I think that gets people upset. So worries, I hear worries on both sides, honestly. I think one of the reasons that we even think about protecting this group of students is because we are worried for them. We know what they've been through, we've heard their stories, and we know that their worries are real, that being in this group of students, being transgender or being, having a different gender identity than others around you is a difficult way to go through school, and we heard that just tonight from a former student. So I think we're protecting them, we want to protect them because we're worried about them. So that's the worry on one side. The worries on the other side, I think, come to questions about things that I don't really think we're doing right now. And one of them is, but I do understand why people's minds go to these places, right? So if we're saying that we will not discriminate against transgender students, people right away start thinking and talking about bathrooms and locker rooms and what will be the practical implementation of this. And I get that. I think Ms. McLaughlin is right that legally, we are expected to have a non-discrimination policy. We're not legally required to do anything particular with our bathrooms. We're not really legally required to do anything in particular at all, other than make sure that as we implement this, we do it in a way that protects the safety, privacy, and dignity of every child. And that is how we do things in Fairfax County, which is why I also feel comfortable setting the policy. That's our job as the board. And the implementation will follow, and I have faith that it will be a good implementation. It will be good for all of our students because we're already doing it. We know how to do it. And I will tell you, the reason that I think we need to make sure that we make this statement as a board is that I think there are people, when I listen to some of the language that I've been reading in some of these emails, and this is not everyone, but there is fear of the other out there. There is fear of difference. There is, I'm not accusing anyone in this room of that, but we've gotten many emails, and I could read you some of the quotes, but I won't because they're very hurtful. And if some of those people are bullying other students, bullying teachers, bullying administrators, then I want everyone in our school system to know that this board protects them and intends to protect them and intends to keep everyone's safety, privacy, and dignity as our top concern. So I will proudly support this.
Mr. Lateef, followed by Ms. Evans.
Hello. First, let me preface this, but I do ask for your attention and your cooperation in letting me finish my remarks. I'm the student representative here. I speak for your children and all 187,000 children in Fairfax County. But you don't know what I'm going to say. You don't know what I'm going to say. I'm not even basically going to talk about this. All I will say is I've heard a lot of feedback from my fellow students from across the county, mainly positive about this change from the feedback I have heard. That's all I'm going to talk about when it comes to non-discrimination. However, I want to ask everyone here, I need you to do something for me and for your children and for the students of Fairfax County. Come budget time next year, I want to see this passion, I want to see this vigor, I want to see this community involvement when it comes to funding our schools. Because that is a true threat to our children, and a true threat to our community is the underfunding of our schools. We can't pay our teachers enough. We have cut $500 million since 2008. We fired over 2,100 teachers in that same time. And during that time, we've gotten 24,000 new kids come to FCPS. So we are overburdened and we are underfunded. And I ask that you bring this passion and this vigor for protecting your own children to those debates, worthwhile debates.
Ms. Evans.
Yes, thank you. I do want to thank Mr. McLaughlin for bringing this, and Mr. Lateef. Those were excellent remarks, too. I appreciate that as well. As a school system and as a society, we must show compassion and understanding for all of our students. Adding gender identity to our non-discrimination policy will put this board on record as not tolerating bullying, harassment, or abuse of any kind against transgender students who are among our most vulnerable. We have transgender students in our school system now. We have an obligation, both legal and moral, to make sure these students are treated fairly. We also provide accommodations for transgender students now, and we have done so with little fanfare and little controversy. We will continue to accommodate these students in a way that makes the most sense for all concerned. In many ways, this is a symbolic action tonight. As you've heard, the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights has told the school systems that Title IX already includes protections for gender identity, and we are all bound by federal law. Adding this to our non-discrimination policy says that we agree that we cannot discriminate against our transgender students, and we will treat them and all students with fairness and respect. I support this motion.
Ms. Schultz, followed by Mr. Velkoff.
I'm not sure if I was longer than you, Ms. Reed, the first time around. I lost track. But hold on, colleagues. Okay. This past Sunday, I watched a story about the rise of a young 17-year-old woman who started as an intern and has risen to be the CEO and the first woman CEO of an automobile manufacturer in the United States. As a mother of 2 children about the age of 2 of my own, I was struck by Mary Teresa Barra's role as a leader in a massive organization. With a $2.6 billion budget and as the largest employer in the Commonwealth, FCPS pales in comparison to GM with 212,000 plus employees in 396 facilities and touching 6 continents. In being charged with improving, some would say even saving GM, her pragmatic approach in ending meetings sometimes on time at 5:30 to make her children's games left an impression on me. But the significant takeaway was her strategic leadership in taking something as simple as a 10-page dress code for their employees down to 2 words: dress appropriately. When faced with the notion that if a child doesn't fit into one of the named particular classes in our non-discrimination policy, that we are or will discriminate against them means we are affirmatively participating in discrimination for many of our children. That notion is preposterous. Earlier in our term, one of my colleagues championed a legislative package item advocating that the Virginia General Assembly press the United States Congress for an equal rights amendment to the U.S. Constitution. I didn't support that. It's not the business of the board. In November, one of my colleagues championed another policy change to this Policy 1450 to add sexual orientation. I didn't support that either. And I spoke at the time about an ongoing subclassification of people due to special protections or treatments that they may be due because of some attribute. I posited at the time whether we should protect teachers who are parents because they will understand the children that they teach better, or those in their childbearing years and subject to time away from their positions as a result. Within months, that very thing happened with Young versus UPS that went to the Supreme Court. And Miss Young is a Commonwealth of Virginia resident who was a pregnant UPS worker not afforded simple duties that would have been commensurate with her temporary needs while pregnant. UPS could take a page from GM, and FCPS should as well. Let's change the non-discrimination policy to 2 words: don't discriminate. I have 2 email excerpts I wish to share, which are voices which are missing from the public engagement on this topic because there hasn't been any. The first is from an FCPS teacher. I do believe that it is FCPS's responsibility to make all students feel welcome and safe, but with that said, I do think we are responsible for all students and staff members within the school. Designating bathrooms for those students is without a doubt the right thing to do, but opening restrooms or locker rooms isn't the answer and it's not the point. If I'm misguided in what your intent is, which we haven't said, please let me know so I can inform all the other professionals in my building. Please note, I teach 2 students that consider themselves transgender or gender neutral. I have never spoken to either of them about which bathroom or locker room they use. They both approached me at the beginning of the year with an index card and said, please refrain from using male or female pronouns in class towards me. They prefer gender-neutral terms. I am very conscientious as to what I say in class and how I say it, but I wonder what in this big world will it be like for these students when they are sheltered from the real world and, for lack of a better word, grocery stores, workplaces, and gyms. Please do not do this. The second voice is the voice of an FCPS parent. As a victim of severe adolescent age bullying that spanned several years and caused me to consider ending my life, I don't protest this measure lightly. I also generally think that the idea of a slippery slope is an overused and undersupported angle when people debate important issues. But in this case, this is truly a slippery slope. The truth is that people are bullied for many reasons, and students are bullied for many, many reasons. They're bullied for being poor, for rich, smart, having a low IQ, for the way they dress, for being too fat, too thin, too short, too tall, too awkward, for not dressing like everyone else, for the way they wear their hair, for the way they smell, for the way they speak, for the kind of cell phone they use, or for not having a cell phone. The list goes on and on. I once heard an LGBT advocate of the safe space posters that teachers are encouraged to put up in their classrooms say in response to this that I'm making, it's true. Most kids don't try to kill themselves because they're fat. How sad and absolutely not true. it demonstrates a shameful level of ignorance. The bottom line is that the school system cannot protect all children from all things all the time, and not from those that society generally looks down upon or doesn't understand. But they can and should enforce a safe and comfortable learning environment for all students in the most reasonable way possible and make accommodations just like these. The problem is, in passing this, as we heard earlier, if there was a task force already underway, why is this motion before the board before staff finishes the work of its task force? If we are already treating students and employees well, and as the maker of the motion, Mr. McLaughlin said, this policy will do nothing, then why are we passing the policy before we know what's in it? I have one last point to make. And the question is whether or not something could happen right away. And that is a big question mark, knowing that staff is not going to have any draft regulations or any handbook for this board to review until the 30th of September, which is after the next school year starts. And a series of questions from my colleagues and including myself were posed to and answered by staff. And one is a very interesting question. Being the parent of 4 children, 1 in college, 1 in high school, 1 in middle school, and 1 in elementary school, I consider myself composite mom. One of the very often posed questions that has nothing to do with bathrooms, that has nothing to do with locker rooms, but is a very real and present concern for which I have no answer, is this: what effect does approving the language have on immediate operational and personnel implementation? E.g., for example, if a teacher comes to school next Monday dressed and identifying with the opposite gender and the language has been passed, then what? This is staff's answer. This is staff's answer. We will work with the teacher, HR, and division council on a plan for that teacher. The teacher would not be allowed to use the bathroom of their choice, and as a practical matter, nearly all faculty bathrooms in our schools are single-stall bathrooms, such that only one person at a time may use them. That doesn't address what happens in the front of the classroom and the rights of the parents to be engaged and to be heard.
Next, I have Mr. Velkoff, followed by Ms. Strauss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the interest of time, I'm not going to read excerpts of letters. We've received, as you've heard, lots of them, and it's instructive to see the wide range of views in the county. But generally, the reasons for not making this policy change generally fall into these categories. 1, the school board's process is secretive. 2, the U.S. Department of Education is bullying us. 3, males will enter female bathrooms, commit any number of acts, and then use gender identity as a defense to get off the hook. I'm repeating the things that people have said. The next one is that FCPS will allow transgender teachers into our schools, and then the children will not be safe. Number 5, parents will lose their right to move their child from a class taught by a transgender teacher. 6, transgender employees and students are already protected. And finally, the lives of 99% will be disrupted for the sake of a fraction of 1%. So let me address each one of these in turn. The school board's process is secretive. Well, we are following the same process that we always do. We post action items as new business a week in advance. We accept public comment during the new business meeting. We act on items 2 weeks later at the next meeting, again after accepting public comment, as we did tonight. We meet here 22 times a year, and these business meetings are broadcast live. We hold more than a dozen work sessions each year across the street, and those are video recorded and posted to our website. At our last meeting, 2 Virginia delegates expressed gratitude that they were able to view our prior work session online. So the next time someone suggests to you that the Fairfax County School Board is not transparent, you might want to ask that person if they know why committee and subcommittee meetings of the House of Delegates are held at 7 o'clock in the morning, whether audio or video recordings of those meetings exist, and whether the delegates' votes are tabulated and posted for the public to see. The second issue, the U.S. Department of Education is bullying us. Frankly, I couldn't care less what the U.S. Department of Education thinks, and for that matter, the Virginia Department of Education. As far as I'm concerned, their missions would be better served if they were shut down and the monies were redirected to universal preschool. The next concern, males will enter female bathrooms at will. First, today and forever, anyone who enters the bathroom of the opposite sex for the purpose of observing others commits sexual harassment and will be dealt with accordingly. Second, today and forever, anyone who enters any bathroom and assaults anyone commits sexual assault and will be dealt with by the school system and the police. Third, the suggestion that transgender persons should be particularly feared for committing such acts has no basis in fact and is simply a witch hunt. It is a sad but true fact that 90% of sexual assaults of children are perpetrated by a friend or family member, and that almost 70% of these occur in the victim's home. As the father of 2 daughters, I have to tell you, the last thing that I worry about is the thought of one of them alone in a bathroom with a transgender woman. Next. The next concern, FCPS will allow transgender teachers in our schools, and then our children will no longer be safe. Well, as you've heard, there's breaking news. We already have transgender teachers and transgender students in FCPS. Each individual is treated with dignity and discretion, and accommodations are being made to the satisfaction of everyone. The reason that we haven't had a full-blown community engagement about this policy is because, frankly, nothing is changing. The notion that outside agitators promote that this policy change will cause a sudden massive upheaval is not true, and the proof is simply that we have been dealing with transgender persons in FCPS, and none of these catastrophic consequences has ever materialized. You see, because of the compassionate culture that characterizes our employees, we are dealing with the needs of transgender persons today as if they were already protected from discrimination. The effect of this policy will be that the school board publicly assumes responsibility for our treatment of transgender persons. Further, our action will foster the development of guidelines that will create uniformity throughout the system and will address the reasonable needs and concerns of all. Next, parents will lose their right to move their child from a class taught by a transgender teacher. Actually, parents have no such right at all. Parents haven't had rights like this since the abolishment of the Virginia Constitution of 1902. We've also heard this, that transgender students and employees are already protected and that this is unnecessary. It is true that sexual orientation and gender identity are already included in our anti-bullying regulation. However, the SR&R governs the behavior of students towards students and does not address the behavior of employees to students or employees to employees. You see, in Virginia, under the Dillon Rule, previous attorney generals have concluded that school boards are granted the authority to govern the behavior of children, but not of the adults. Finally, the fear that, or the concern that the lives of 99% will be disrupted for the sake of less than 1%. This majoritarian view was frequently expressed by constituents in communications to the board. The problem I have with this line of reasoning is that there are so many examples in American history where the consequences of such thinking led to blemishes on our past or indeed blights today. I'm reminded of the parable of the sheep and goats from Matthew 25. And I'd like to read a brief excerpt from the contemporary English version. When I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. And when I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was a stranger, you welcomed me. And when I was naked, you gave me clothes to wear. When I was sick, you took care of me, and when I was in jail, you visited me. Then the ones who please the Lord will ask, when did we give you something to eat? When did we welcome you as a stranger, or give you clothes to wear, or visit you when you were sick or in jail? And as many of you know, the king will answer, whenever you did it for any of my people, no matter how unimportant they seemed, you did it for me. Madam Chair, without hesitation, I support adding the words gender identity to policy 1450.
Ms. Strauss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our schools must provide a safe and respectful place for all to learn and to work. Harassment and bullying for any reason, including gender identity, has no place in our schools. Fear gets in the way of learning. Our schools are a place of study and learning and growing. We cannot have fear. I support this policy update because it clearly states students may not be harassed or bullied for any reason. Thank you.
Would any of my colleagues like to speak first before I do go backs? Mr. Stork.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I learned a lot about this issue a few years ago when I became aware of a situation with a child in one of our schools who was very young, the age of several years old, 2 or 3 years old, and they weren't sure what gender they truly were. They were physically one gender, but they were not, that is not how they felt. As a school system, we provided that child the room and the parents, because the parents were equally challenged about that. They were truly not sure about what to do, what to make of this, how to move this forward, how to address this with their child. But they cared deeply for their child. And that child is somebody that they wanted to be respected, somebody they wanted to help nurture who they truly were. And they were deeply appreciative of our school system as we carefully, gently, supportively help that patient, help that parent, and help that child through the process, through their growing years in our school system. And I know that that child is a healthier person as a result. It doesn't matter whether they were a male or female. It doesn't matter whether they thought they were male or female. What matters is that child had something that he or she needed to work through. And working through that with the parents, who were also deeply concerned about the need to do that, was how that particular family dealt with this issue. And our system, our school system, is here to provide just that type of support to any child, regardless of where they're coming from. That is what we are about. That's what I believe we do. That's what we must continue to do. Doing right by all students, protecting each student, respecting each student and staff member. I think those are foundational beliefs that I have, and I think foundational beliefs of this system, and I'm working forward, looking forward, working hard to protect. I personally start with not discriminating based upon who the person is. I think that's wrong. I believe it is a basic right, it is the right thing to do, and it's something that many, many, many people have paid for dearly in the past. Our students are safe. They have been safe. This policy addition will continue to keep them safe, and frankly will increase the sense of safety of those students who are most different from others. Passing this policy is the right thing to do because discrimination is wrong, is hurtful, and we need to make it clear that it is unequivocally the wrong thing for our society and for this board to be doing. That is why I am voting yes to add this gender identity to policy 1450. It is the right thing to do. Thank you.
I have two go-backs, Ms. Schultz and Ms. McLaughlin.
I just want to make perfectly clear that the irony that we're talking about language in a policy that if we don't implement it, then the federal government is going to come after our children's lunch money by withholding our federal education funds is story number one. If we don't implement it, children who have a gender identity issue will be affirmatively discriminated against, even though everything we've heard has said that our FCPS staff personnel do a stellar job addressing the needs individually and respectfully in each and every case, is problem number two. Problem number three is that we are put in a position that the Virginia Attorney General Mark Herring has had an outlier opinion that doesn't match any others. So say we go forward under his opinion and we incorporate this, because then it aligns the state language with the federal language, which, if you went back to number one, is the federal government forcing this policy decision. Because if what we're doing is working for our students and working for our employees is respectful, is honorable, while we continue to honor and respect the rights of parents, the other employees, and the other students, then basically what we're doing is working very well unless I have a report otherwise. So now I'm back to, is it the federal government that's making me do this? And if the federal government is going to reach down and compel me as an individual, duly elected official of this school system, then they can do the same thing in 14,000 school districts across the country with any language at any time. And if that's the way the school education policy is going to be run in your school district, when things are going well and we are respecting the minority, the children with difficulties, whether it's students with disabilities, students with gender issues, students with stress, students with mental wellness issues, students with suicide ideation, these are all issues that we handle on a regular basis in a large and well-performing school system. So if we can't answer your questions about what this means in practice, if the practice is already happening, then why pass the policy? If the policy needs to be passed, in order to meet a federal mandate under threat of losing federal education funds, then let's have that conversation on a national basis, because that's the problem that's got to be addressed.
Ms. McLaughlin. Ms. McLaughlin has the floor.
I again want to say that as someone who has been a community advocate for almost a decade, your engagement on this issue, it matters. It matters. Your engagement matters tonight, and it will matter again in the follow-on motion that you all need to be aware of. Part of the comfort level that the most important part of the comfort level that I have, and I believe many of my colleagues who support this, is number one, it was a policy update, that we don't discriminate, and we're making that clear. What we also know is that through the follow-on motion that we will be voting on after this main motion, is that the school board is going to be reviewing with the superintendent any recommended changes in the future that again protect the rights and the needs of every single student in this school district. So it is important that with this board, what we have heard you clap and applaud is that you do respect and understand the need to not discriminate. And that is what this policy update is tonight. Simply that.
Are there any other go-backs before we take a vote? All right, I haven't spoken yet. So the motion before us to add gender identity to our non-discrimination policy is simply to provide an environment that promotes equality where every student and employee is treated with dignity and respect. This tells our students and staff that school and the FCPS workplace are places they can be safe from harassment and discrimination. If this vote passes tonight, decisions made regarding accommodations will be provided under revised policy. Our next step will be to hire a consultant to assist us in developing appropriate regulations and best practices to protect the rights of students and comply with state and federal law. The decisions made about how best to protect our students and staff from discrimination We will take great care in that to protect the rights and to provide for the needs of all students. FCPS will continue to provide the highest quality of education for all students in a safe, supportive, and caring environment. I intend to vote yes to this policy. The motion before us is that I move that the school board adopt policy 1450, non-discrimination, as detailed in the agenda item. All those in favor? Moon, McElveen, Hines, Smith, Daranack, Koufax, Velkoff, McLaughlin, Stork, Strauss, and Evans. Opposed? Schultz. Abstentions? Reed. The motion passes. I now call on Mr. McElveen for a follow-on motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the school board review the procedural handbook for policy 1450, non-discrimination, once the handbook is completed prior to the handbook's implementation in the district.
Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Hines. Mr. McElveen, would you like to speak on your motion,
Madam.
please? It's difficult to hear up here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we are going forward with this follow-on motion to ensure that the board does get to review any policy or any regulation changes as a result of this policy change, as Ms. McLaughlin already discussed.
Ms. Hines? Nothing. Ms. McLaughlin?
I just think it's very important that earlier tonight, when my colleague Ms. Schultz and Ms. Reed talked about their concerns about what this policy update might mean. And that is why, looking at tonight's actions, it's important to understand you're talking about two different steps. The first one is updating a policy that reflects what I believe is the values of Fairfax County, which is we don't discriminate. Period, the end. That's what the policy update was. The follow-on motion is to allow the community to understand that if, and that is a big if, there to be any changes of any kind, the board, the superintendent, and the community will have an opportunity to be able to see what a consultant and national best practices have to say about the current practices we have that respect the dignity, the privacy, and the safety of each and every child in this school system. Again, your children have been safe today, they were safe yesterday, and they will continue to be safe tomorrow in our public schools.
Any other comments? Mr. Velkoff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm afraid I'm going to be a curmudgeon on this one, in the sense that this is unnecessary, though well-intentioned, and because of course the school board is going to review the regulation that will come from the superintendent, and it's unnecessary to pass a follow-on motion to do something that we're already going to do.
Ms. McLaughlin, for a follow-up.
I just want to say to my colleagues, I understand what Mr. Velkoff is saying, but in light of the fact that there seemed to be public misunderstanding about what our current practices are and concerns or worries that, in fact, there isn't going to be an opportunity for the board to work with our superintendent on this issue, I felt that the follow-on motion would have a very helpful effect in reassuring the community of our continued governance and oversights of our practices. So I do hope that our colleagues will vote in full support of this follow-on motion. I think it's a wonderful way to educate our community about the best practices of this governing body and how there can be confidence in the work we're doing.
Ms. Hines.
Maybe I'm just repeating, but I think it is important when we say that we will review it, what that means is that we will, in a public way, take a look at what staff has decided to do to implement this policy, and I think there's been sufficient interest in the public that we probably want to do that in a public way. So I appreciate this follow-on motion.
All right, seeing no other comments, the motion on the table is that I move that the school board review the procedural handbook for policy 1450, non-discrimination, once the handbook is completed prior to the handbook's implementation in the district. All those in favor for this follow-on motion? Moon, McElveen, Hines, Smith, Derenak, Koufax, McLaughlin, Stork, Strauss, and Evans. Opposed? Mr. Velkoff, abstentions? Ms. Reed, with Ms. Schultz away from the table. That motion passes. We next move on to action item 4.02, Regulation 2.2601, the student rights and responsibilities. And I call on Ms. Strauss.
Thank you. I move the school board adopt Regulation 2601.29P, Student Rights and Responsibilities, as detailed in the agenda item.
Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Hines. All right. Ms. Strauss, would you like to speak?
Yes, there were no substantive changes in regulation. This year, the sum and substance of the changes were word clarifications. We did receive an update on the preliminary results of the substantial changes that we have made previously in the SR&R, and it does show that we have increased positive behavior supports, more restorative justice, fewer suspensions, fewer school transfers. So I urge my colleagues, we did have a work session on this, and basically we looked at the updated language, and I urge my colleagues to support this. Thank you.
Ms. Hines?
Nothing to add, thank you.
All right, Ms. Evans.
Yes, thank you. I just want to say that, first of all, we have made great strides in our discipline reform in the last several years. This has been an area where we had great concerns several years ago, and we have made a lot of gains and a lot of efforts with restorative justice, for example, and in reducing out-of-school suspensions. Our expulsion rates have gone way, way down, and I think that both this board and the school system, our staff, are to be congratulated on that. I continue to look at the parent notification piece. I will say that that is one area, I don't have an amendment this year on that. I think that it's an area that we still need to watch. It's important that in all of our schools that the language that we adopted a couple of years ago was that parents would be notified as soon as practicable and before a student is asked to write or sign a statement. And I believe that we have certainly implemented this in terms of students not being asked to write a statement before the parents are called. I think that that has been implemented with fidelity. I'm not as sure about the as soon as practicable part. And so that is an area that I think we need to continue to watch and make sure that we are actually doing that. So with that, I do support this wholeheartedly this year, and I do think that we have made great gains overall with that one area that I think we need to continue to watch.
Mr. Stork.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I share the comments of my previous colleagues regarding the SR&R. I think we've made great strides. We clearly have done that with some very hard work, not only in the previous board's part, but this board as well. I commend staff for, frankly, the fidelity of implementation on this. I know, and I'll speak to previously, I think there was concern about whether or not there truly has been and was fidelity of implementation. I think we're seeing that over the last couple of years, and Dr. Garza, I particularly thank you and your leadership on this. It is a very sensitive community issue, very sensitive board issue, and I know that we we're the better for it in terms of how we are working with students. Like most of us never did understand how it made sense to suspend a child, send them home for 10 days and have them do whatever they wanted for 10 days, when in reality, that's the worst thing we could have done for them. And I think what we're seeing is clearly the progress being made and having those students in school and having them learn as part of that. My only concern on the SR&R, it just is a general concern regarding my only concern is a general concern regarding our restorative, our responsive classroom and PBIS programs. I don't know if they're fully utilized in each of our schools. I'm seeing and hearing a lot of that from, particularly at the elementary school level, which actually the elementary schools were at one time the leaders of this process, which is kind of what's concerning to me, is I hope we're not losing the benefit of that, because we know what students learn in elementary school and they bring on to them in terms of their behavior and how they respond to you know, if you will, our coaching and character development issues. So I have a couple specific schools in mind, but frankly, it's really more of a general concern, and I would ask the superintendent to truly pursue this issue and make sure at least the assistant superintendents and executive principals are looking at that and making sure that we're implementing that with fidelity as well. So thank you.
Ms. McLaughlin.
First, I want to thank Dr. Garza and her leadership team for their continued efforts to really improve our practices. I'm deeply grateful as someone who has worked with the juvenile court system and as a social worker have wanted very much for our discipline practices to be restorative, to really help our students learn from their mistakes, but have an opportunity to be successful and not be devastated by the mistakes they happen to make while in our schools. I did want to share with my colleagues that I mentioned in our work session that I have a little bit of concern with one of the changes that were made. It had to do with the unexcused absences, and without going into great detail, I'll just simply say that I do hope that our principals and our assistant superintendents will work with our families, that when there are absences for our students, that we be as respectful as we can for parents who write about their children being out of school. That partnership between parents and our principals in support of our students is paramount. The other thing that I want to celebrate, and again express my appreciation to Dr. Dockery, Dr. Lip, and certainly Dr. Garza, which is your work with one of our very dedicated advocates in the community, Sheree Brown Kaplan, around students with disabilities, and some language changes that you incorporated based on our work session and our conversation, and again, trying to help our students with disabilities be successful. And so I want to, again, publicly thank you for that. And it is because of the continued progress that I see in this effort to revise our SR&R that I will be voting on this evening in support of it. And one final note, a constituent of mine in Braddock District participated recently in a restorative justice circle and thought it was one of the most remarkable things. This constituent is actually one of our alums, and I just want to commend you again for what I believe is helping Fairfax lead in a national way on how we help children be held accountable, but again, allow them to learn, grow, and be successful in our schools. So thank you.
All right, Ms. Reed.
Thank you. Chairman Darren at Fairfax. I won't repeat what Ms. McLaughlin just said, but I also just want to thank staff for strengthening the language about consulting with the IEP team and using that as a tool to really understand the individual. So thank you very much for that. The other point I wanted to make, which I alluded to, I think now several hours ago when we were talking about the other topic, is that it's just an observation. I note that several times in this document we refer to discrimination, harassment, bullying, and we have a laundry list of various traits, and they don't match. So I don't know if that bothers anybody, but I think we should be consistent in all of our policy documents when we list, race, color, religion, disability, orientation, identification, genetic information, or other characteristic. That's what I'm referring to in this document, and my point is that in other places we have other such lists. And so it just as a matter of both consistency as well as our intentions, I would point that out to my colleagues. Dan, you're looking very puzzled. But I'm sorry, the forest for the trees, I must also applaud the, back to the 10,000-foot level, the changes that have been made in this document reflect not only the work of staff and leadership team, but the hard work of the committee who worked so hard to provide recommendations. And even though they're not here tonight, I'm sure that they would be happy knowing that many of their ideas have come to fruition, have actually resulted in very positive changes to our system, and really meeting those goals that we all have of making sure our kids aren't out of school for a long period of time, making sure that the tone is restorative and not punitive, and that the numbers actually are going down in terms of recidivism and infractions. So kudos to everybody who's been a part of this very long process, and where I feel like we've actually made some good progress on this whole thing. This doesn't mean that we're finished, Dr. Garza.
Any other colleagues who would like to comment? Dr. Garza.
Yes, just very quickly, I'm very proud of the work that's been done on this very important topic. And I agree with the comments that were made. We're not there yet, but I think we're definitely headed in the right direction. I think there's lots of evidence to support that. I'm particularly pleased at the fact that we've reduced the number of days that students are missing school, holding them accountable, but keeping them in school. The efforts to be proactive and using restorative justice, the responsive classroom. There's so many things that our schools are using as wonderful tools. We heard some examples of that just recently at a board meeting, I think a couple of board meetings ago from McLean High School, and we had like 4 or 5 or 6 schools here that were doing some great things to make sure that students are learning from their mistakes, and we're reducing recidivism, which is a great signal and sign. So lots of great work has been done there. I thank the board for providing leadership direction, definitely, but also providing the support for our schools in making this happen. I'm also mindful of the great work of the leadership team led by Dr. Kim Dockery, Dr. Lip, so many others. If I begin naming them all, I'm going to forget someone. But everyone that's been a part of this. And then finally, I have to acknowledge our principals and our school-based staff, because they're the ones that have embraced these changes and made them be successful. And so I'm very, very proud of the great work. And I do believe this is an area that I know that other school systems across the country are looking to us and seeing what we're doing as more and more attention is focused on how do we keep students in school, but keep schools safe, hold them accountable, and help them learn from these circumstances. So thank you, members of the board.
Thank you. The main motion on the table is I move that the school board adopt Regulation 2601.29P, Students' Rights and Responsibilities, as detailed in the agenda item. All those in favor? The vote is unanimous with Ms. Schultz away from the table. This is the portion of the meeting where the board will confirm any action regarding issues that were discussed in the closed meeting. These issues may include action taken regarding student disciplinary matters. Board members have discussed each individual case, and at this time will make a motion to confirm the recommended action. I call on Ms. Strauss for a motion.
I move to deny the school reassignment appeal of a student who brought in an illegal drug paraphernalia, and alcohol to school, and to confirm the disciplinary decision of the division superintendent.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Velkoff. All those in favor? McElveen, Hines, Smith, Darnett, Kofach, Fax, Velkoff, Strauss. Opposed? McLaughlin and Evans, and with Mr. Stork and Ms. Schultz away from the I'm sorry, abstentions was there? I apologize. Abstentions, Mr. Moon and Ms. Reed. The motion, with Ms. Schultz and Mr. Stork away from the table, the motion passes. Next, we will move on to our consent agenda. Our adopted rules of parliamentary procedure, Robert's Rules, provide for a consent agenda listing several items for approval by the board in a single motion. Many items listed have gone through board review, and documentation has been provided to all board members and the public in advance. Items may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member. 5.01. Approve the minutes of the April 23, 2015 regular school board meeting. 5.02, adopt policy 1102, development of directives. Policy 2730, confidentiality of student information. Policy 6220, data security, data processing recovery, and contingency planning. Policy 6470, records retention and disposition. Policy 8230, school design, and Policy 8335, wireless telecommunication facilities as detailed in the agenda item. 5.03, adopt the resolution requesting the Board of Supervisors to approve and to take all necessary and appropriate action to place on the ballot for the November 2015 general election a school bond referendum in the amount of $310 million as detailed in the agenda item. Award a contract for the installation of synthetic turf fields for Annandale High School to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Spin Turf LLC, in the amount of $1,194,000, and contract for Hayfield Secondary School to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Spin Turf LLC, in the amount of $1,542,000, and authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute and administer the contract on behalf of the school board. 5.05, award a contract for the installation of synthetic turf fields for South County High School to the lowest responsible bidder, Hellis Construction Incorporated, in the amount of $3,900,000, and a contract for Stewart High School to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Hellis Construction Incorporated, in the amount of $1,949,000, and authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute and administer the contract on behalf of the school board. 5.06, award the contract for automatic temperature control system replacement at Belvedere Elementary School to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Simons Industry Incorporated, in the amount of $328,100, and authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute and administer the contract on behalf of the school board. Is there any objection to approving the consent agenda? Seeing and hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. The following are new business items. There will not be a vote tonight on these items, but action is scheduled at a future meeting. 6.01, adopt the FY 2016 approved budget as detailed in the FY 2016 advertised budget, modified by the adjustments included in the agenda item. And I now call on Kristen Michael, our Assistant Superintendent of Financial Services, for a brief presentation.
Thank you so much. In terms of some background for the FY16 budget, the FY16 budget was developed based on a shared approach of making expenditure reductions combined with requesting increased funding from the County Board of Supervisors of 3.99%. Due to the significant reductions that we've taken since 2008, and with nearly $100 million in reductions taken this school year, the significant financial challenges projected for FY17, all of those combined led us to take a very strategic and targeted approach to identifying both the investments and the reductions included in the FY16 budget. The 16 approved budget, as it is presented tonight and recommended, is an increase of 2.2% or 53.9% over our current 53.9 million over our current year's approved budget. The key expenditures are focused on FCPS's requirements and priorities, and they include funding for enrollment growth and student demographics of 22.1 million, compensation increases, a step and a 0.62% market scale adjustment, totaling 51.9 million, funding for full-day Mondays of 4.9 million, later high school start times 4.9 million, and finally targeted relief for large elementary class sizes of 3.1 million. All of these expenditure increases were offset by reductions that totaled 61.4 million. That's 55.4 million for our previous reductions plus 6 million for the VRS rate reduction. When we look over time, looking back since 2008, with nearly $500 million in reductions taken, FCPS has had to make very difficult choices in light of limited resources. A program review process has been used to target cost savings and avoidances and to determine resource reallocations. That's included exploring alternative service delivery models, identifying opportunities for reorganization, consolidation, reduction, and elimination. Since the majority of FCPS's budget is for positions, FCPS also examined each position category to look for efficiencies and also adjusted employee contract lengths. At the school level, we've reduced assistant principals, clerical, custodial, and at the central support level, we've consolidated departments, reorganized, and also implemented significant reductions. All of these while trying to minimize the impact that reductions have had on our schools. No instructional programs or departments were spared, and in addition, we also had to increase class size 3 times. When we first developed the budget for FY16, we started last summer, and when the proposed budget was being developed, there were still many unknowns. The governor's budget proposal doesn't come out until late December, which is right before FCPS's proposed budget is released, and the impact of the final state budget actually isn't known until spring. In addition, enrollment projections for the proposed budget are completed shortly after school begins, and therefore don't account for the actual enrollment changes that occur during the school year. So when we look at student enrollment, we make projections for general education, advanced academics, ESOL, which is English for speakers of other languages, and they're calculated twice every year. First, we start in the fall for the proposed budget, and again, we complete those shortly after school begins, and we don't have the value yet of the current year's enrollment trends. Second, every spring, we recalculate all of our enrollment projections, allowing us to take the impact of enrollment from the current school year and incorporate those into the projections that are used to staff school the next year. Then any of those changes from the proposed until the approved budget are calculated in the approved agenda. When we look back historically, changes in enrollment growth and demographics at the approved budget stage over the last 7 years have ranged from a decrease of 6.3 million to an increase of 10.6 million. For this year's budget, FY16, our final approved enrollment updates for next year have been completed, and it results in an increase in expenditures of 3.5 million. That includes a combined impact of general education decreasing by 1.5 million, our costs for English for speakers of other languages increasing by 0.8 million, and then finally, our special education costs increasing by 3.5 million, combined with the advanced staffing for our new school at Fort Belvoir, funded significantly with grant funding, adjustments to per pupil allocations and substitutes. So when we look at all of these things together, this chart summarizes the adjustments for the school operating fund that are included on the full agenda that's posted for this evening's meeting. As you all know, the Board of Supervisors has adopted their FY16 budget, and it left a gap of $14 million between what we requested in our advertised budget and what they finally proposed. Then secondly, based on the impact of the Virginia Department of Education's final calculations of the state budget, we have an increase of $4.7 million in revenue, primarily for the compensation incentive funding provided by the state, which is offset by a $0.8 million decrease in revenue due to the VRS rate change combined with the basic aid offset. So when you combine those together, that results in the required revenue adjustments of a decrease of $10.1 million. In terms of expenditures, which is the second half of this chart, the first FCPS is going to see a reduction in expenditures of $6 million as a result of the state adopting a lower rate for the Virginia retirement system. That is offset by the increase in enrollment costs that I just talked about of $3.5 million. We also included funding for the school board salaries for the second half of the year, and overall that results in required expenditure adjustments reflecting a decrease of $2.5 million. So when we combine the revenue and expenditure reductions, you can see we have a gap of $7.6 million that needed to be addressed.
And that also I wanted to remind the public that was shared with the Board of Supervisors on February the 27th, that exact chart, and that's been done consistently in that same way forever. Because that's the way we have to develop budgets based upon projections.
Correct.
So this is not a new methodology. It's been done this way, and it has to be done this way for many reasons.
Correct. So to address that gap of $7.6 million, the recommended adjustment would be to decrease the market scale adjustment from 1% to 0.62%, which will save expenditures of $7.6 billion. This will result in FCPS eligible employees receiving a step increase that's valued at 2.5%, and all employees would receive a market scale adjustment of 0.62% for an average salary increase across all our employee groups of 3.12%. This increase is certainly less than we would have liked to provide to our employees, and it's also less than the 3.6% average increase that county employees will receive. So in summary, our overall recommended adjustments in terms of balancing the approved budget result in an increase of 2.2% from the FY15 approved. We did receive less funding than we had requested from the county. We do still have a structural deficit, but it's been significantly reduced from $48.5 million in one-time funding used to balance our current year's budget down to $20.7 million in one-time funding used in our FY16 budget. The expenditures in this budget are focused on our priorities, and our results were very targeted with a long-term focus in place. So when we look ahead, we've really been talking about the significant budget challenges that we're going to face in FY17 for a long time, starting with the Joint Budget Development Committee last summer. Then we also included this information in our Citizens Guide to the Budget, which was widely shared with the public. So we've really been focused on a multi-year strategy the entire time we developed the FY16 budget. So in terms of FY17, the preliminary forecast shown on these slides includes both revenue and expenditure adjustments, and there are notes provided on the right. In terms of revenue, we're assuming that we'll be able to meet the beginning balance amount included in our FY16 budget, $27.8 million in total. On these charts, the county transfer is shown as level in order to reflect our total need based on the required expenditures and our other known revenue and the desired compensation increases for our employees. So on the revenue side, we have a state revenue increase of $4.1 million. That's a reflection of our increased enrollment. And we've also included a reduction placeholder for state revenue that reflects the possibility of a decrease in funding due to the recalculation of the LCI, or the Local Composite Index. If we look back, our local composite index increased twice during the economic downturn, the first time in FY13 for $40 million, and then prior to that, it actually increased by $60 million in FY11. So this adjustment is conservative. If it really goes back to where it was before, you've seen over those two increases, we received over $100 million.
And so your point is on that, Kristen, that fluctuation could be very extreme. And so the only thing we can do right now is guess, and so that placeholder is 19.5. But this summer, late summer, we should have some indication of how extreme that LCI adjustment could potentially affect us. But it could be very significant, unfortunately.
So assuming a sales tax increase of 3% and assuming our tuition from Fairfax City increases by 2%, we're looking at a net revenue reduction of $8.6 million. When we move to the expenditure side, enrollment and student demographic changes are projected to increase our costs by $22.1 million in FY17. Then if we're to provide our employees with a step and a 1.5% market scale adjustment, that totals $72.6 million, which would be offset by $19.1 million in base savings from employee turnover. Then moving to our required expenditures, because our VRS rate will increase from 80 to 90% of the actuarial rate, we're projecting an increase of $31.4 million in retirement expenditures in FY17. In addition, we have health expenditures expected to increase by 6.5%. So after accounting for our other required expenditure increases and prior to accounting for any increases related to our strategic plan or unfunded needs, we see our expenditure requirements totaling $126.2 million. So when that's combined with our loss of revenue, we're facing a projected deficit of nearly $135 million. Now that deficit is prior to any of our unfunded needs. Class sizes have been increased 3 times since the economic downturn. We still have a waiting list for pre-K services. We have students who need access to technology, both at school and at home. Our funding for major maintenance and preventative maintenance is not nearly enough to reduce our long-term costs and extend the life of our major systems. We also don't have enough funding in terms of replacement equipment, computers and other equipment, buses and vehicles. Finally, this forecast doesn't include any funding for innovation. Without additional funding to confront emerging needs, issues, and opportunities, we still have a $135 million deficit. Before I discuss the important dates, I also want to take just a minute to talk about our other funds. Everything I've said thus far has been about our school operating fund. But when you look first at our school construction fund, you'll see a decrease of $13.1 million. And that's because the county's adopted budget did not fund the recommendations of the Infrastructure Financing Committee. So we had to recognize that loss of revenue. The county's budget did include guidance to consider this item at year end, and if that funding is provided as part of their carryover package in September, we'll recognize that change as part of our mid-year budget review in December. Finally, we also have additional grant adjustments in both our Food and Nutrition Services Fund and our Grants Fund. So when we look at the upcoming dates, next May 12th, we have our school board public hearings, and May 13th if needed. Then on May 14th, we have a budget work session, and then finally the board will take action on the FY16 budget on May 21st, which goes into effect July 1st. For any citizens watching, the last slide tells how you can participate in the process and sign up for the public hearings.
Thank you, Ms. Michael.
Thank you.
All right, we are on a new business, and that was 6.01. We are down to 6.02. Award the contract for hazardous materials removal services to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder or bidders, and authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute and administer the contract on behalf of the school board. 6.03, award a contract for the compactor refuse disposal to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute and administer the contract on behalf of the school board. 6.04, adopt policy 5017, school procurement system, as detailed in the agenda item. Next is superintendent matters, and I call on Dr. Garza.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the board. As was pointed out earlier, this is Teacher Appreciation Week. So I think it's only appropriate for us to extend to our teachers our deepest appreciation for their dedication and service. Our over 14,000 teachers are exemplary professionals who work tirelessly to provide for the needs of our students. They are the reason FCPS is nationally recognized as a great school system. I am deeply grateful for our teachers, our educators, our employees, and I simply say thank you.
Next on our agenda item is board reports. And I will start with Ms. Reed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. April 27th, we had a work session. We talked about the required adjustments that Ms. Kristen Michael just reviewed with us as a result of the county and state change in revenues. We talked at length about compensation adjustment options as a result of the $7.6 million shortfall, and we discussed the dreadful fiscal forecast for FY 2017.
Next, Mr. Moon, the April 29th Audit Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On April 29th, we had an audit committee work session. And at the meeting, we discussed the status of the current audit work and also discussed the evaluation of the Auditor General, evaluation process of Auditor General, and discussed business process turnover audits of 7 schools and monopol audit. And also, staff provided Medicaid reimbursement program final update. And finally, we discussed the selection process for adding 2 community members to the school board audit committee.
And I call on Mr. Velkoff to talk about a forum that was held earlier this evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And fortunately, it was not a dreadful meeting. The first topic was brought forth by Mrs. Reed and Ms. McLaughlin requesting assistance with how to efficiently cope with large volumes of email, which is a timely topic. The superintendent indicated that Mr. Guilfoyle is investigating tools for what I believe is called customer relationship management that would give us some reporting capability and help automate the tracking of email. And then it was also discussed that in the near term, this would be discussed at the next PEC meeting so that some practical actions could be taken in the interim. Next was a topic that I brought to the to the board to refer to governance, the idea of the board and individuals of the board setting goals and tracking progress. Once again, I was not able to convince my colleagues of the wisdom of my visionary ideas. However, I was encouraged to share some thoughts with the governance committee about our upcoming board self-evaluation. And also, I think I very much appreciated comments from several of you and basically identifying the importance of board goals being incorporated into the strategic plan.
Thank you. And agenda item number 9.01 are board matters, and I will start with Ms. Evans.
Pass.
Ms. Strauss.
Other than thank you to the wonderful, wonderful teachers who work with our children every day, do such a fine job. We owe such a debt of gratitude to all of these fabulous people, and I hope that they stay with us forever because we do want to support them. Thank you.
Mr. Stork.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to echo the comments made by Mr. Lateef regarding the 6th grade all-county course, which was again a wonderful affair, and Mr. Moon and Mr. Lateef and I thoroughly enjoyed ourselves as usual. I also appreciate the hosting of the Nexus conference about a week ago, where we explored mental health related issues and really concerns that students and the community have about how do we support the overall mental health and success of our students in school. In my office hours this past Saturday, I had obviously had some conversations with folks about gender identity, and I think they were very thoughtful and helpful ones for me. And I'd like to thank a gentleman who came in regarding concerns about the South County area boundary study. They're clearly looking for some changes there. And I have been speaking with Washington Mill Elementary School parents. They were concerned that there's been some type of change in the renovation status. I've reassured them again, both in writing and verbally, that there has been no change in the Washington Mill Elementary School renovation status. There's been no change. It's that simple. And we will obviously in the future, as we look at future budgets and funding, they will be part of those discussions. But they are currently in the queue where they were before and remain. And a couple of student-specific issues, and then I want to thank Ms. Passman for bringing up the adult community education budget and her perennial and ongoing concerns about making sure we fund and support our adult education students. Thank you.
Ms. McLaughlin.
I just want to add what Mr. Lateef highlighted earlier at the beginning of the meeting, which is this Saturday, the second annual community conversation on teen stress, fostering wellness and resiliency. I have thoroughly enjoyed the opportunity to work with Dr. Garza's team in planning this conference, and with Harris as well, and his outstanding input from the student perspective. I really hope that as many parents and students will take advantage of coming to Hayfield Secondary School this Saturday. The keynote address will be from a renowned psychology professor at Yale. We're very fortunate to have him come to speak, and there is an incredible array of sessions that'll be focused on this issue of teen stress and mental health and wellness. And as Mr. Lateef noted, we're very fortunate to be bringing the dean from the University of Virginia Admissions, Greg Roberts, and I've had the pleasure of meeting him before, and I think it will be very helpful for our community to get a chance to hear from him about the college admissions process and providing that valuable perspective for our community. So please keep in mind that you can simply go to the FCPS website, and if you go under news and information and activities, you'll see the link. It's not too late to register, but I do believe that this will be a fantastic opportunity for you and your family, and I'd be remiss if I didn't also add that we are very fortunate through the generosity of FCFT and Harris Lateef's input that we are also having Professor Tracy Cross from Williamsburg, College of William & Mary, who will also be the closing speaker of that event. So I do hope to see you there. And finally, I just want to take this moment to share with my colleagues that this was probably our most challenging night as a board in terms of really trying to convey to the public how much we care about the input and the concerns they have for their children. And I do hope from today going forward that we will have this opportunity to continue to reassure our families and our students and our employees the dedication of our superintendent, her administration, and this board to make sure that each and every student and each and every employee feels respected and have their opportunity to thrive in our amazing public school system.
Ms. Smith? Ms. Hines?
Oh, just a couple things. I wanted to thank the Fox Mill Elementary School folks for inviting some of us, and Mr. Moon and I were there last Friday. Oh, and Mr. McElvain as well, that's right. Last Friday night at their Matsuri celebration. It's a celebration of children. The Fox Mill Elementary School has a great Japanese immersion program, and it was a really wonderful night. They did such a great job. The kids really participated in it and made it just great. I want to thank Lindsay Trout, principal at Terrasset Elementary School, for letting me tag along on a building tour. They are about halfway through their major renovation, and they've opened about a half of the new building, including the library, and it is absolutely beautiful. Those of you who know, Terrasset Elementary was one of the two, I think, berm buildings way back. It's very old, and has not ever been renovated, and the new building is just going to be glorious, and it will continue to have a green roof, and the PTA there and the teachers are just I'm so excited about what they're planning to do with that outdoor classroom. Really looking forward to that. I want to thank Cornerstones, formerly Reston Interfaith, for hosting a meeting last night for me to speak to some Forest Edge Elementary School parents who live in the Cedar Ridge apartment complex there of that community. There's a Kim Price, the wonderful principal there, is retiring, and so we are working on a new principal selection. And the North African Arabic-speaking community there in the Cedar Ridge Apartments is a very important part of that school, and I really appreciated having the chance to hear their concerns and comments and to get them involved in the process. Which they already are. The school system's doing a good job of involving them, but it was important for me to sit with them and listen as well. Looking forward to the Teen Stress Summit on Saturday, particularly having those college admissions folks there. I want to hear from them, and I want them to hear from our students too. So I think that'll be an important addition to the day. Teacher Appreciation Week, I think I made the mistake of saying 2 weeks ago that it was Teacher Appreciation Week, my bad, but you know what, every week is Teacher Appreciation Week in my view. So thank you all obviously so much for all that you do every day. We so wish we could do more for you, and we are working as hard as we can. And to all the moms out there, happy Mother's Day.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Thank you. And on that note of Teacher Appreciation Week, as always, I want to thank my family of teachers, my wife and my dad, who are probably falling asleep in front of the TV right now. But thank you all. And I do want to extend a special thanks to staff for all their work this week. I know it's been tough, but you helped us a lot, so thank you.
Ms. Reed?
Thank you. I just have a list of 105 items to go through.
I'm sorry, I will not allow that.
I recently met with the Real Food for Kids group and the Kaiser Foundation over at Marshall High School to talk about partnership opportunities, and we had a chance to tour the Statesman Station and brag a little bit about what Fairfax County Public Schools is doing to provide fresh food for kids. I attended the Support Employees Association meeting. It was wonderful. I really enjoyed talking to those folks and look forward to a continued dialogue. We could have spent hours. There was a lot to discuss. I wanted to give a shout out to 3 young men from Falls Church High School. I attended their Eagle Scout Court of Honor. Andrew Jackson, Ian Stocking, and Kendall Trouts. It was the first time I had attended one, and it was fabulous. It was quite a community event, and it was full of pomp and circumstance, and it was just such a wonderful accomplishment for those young men. So I wanted to thank them for the invitation. Wanted to remind my colleagues that we have a work session on Monday. Ms. McLaughlin and I are meeting managers. We have already met with staff, and we're gearing up for some very good discussions. We're going to try to stay very focused. So again, please read all the materials in advance, send questions in advance, and we're going to keep everybody on target here. Last but not least, just reminding you, budget, we're winding down, as we've heard tonight, at least for this portion of the budget discussion, and next Tuesday night we'll have a public hearing. I think I read about 30 people have signed up so far, so we don't know yet if we'll need that second night on Wednesday. And then, of course, we'll start winding down for the passage of the budget on the 21st in 2 weeks, and then, of course, starting discussions on FY 2017. And that's all I have for now, unless you want me to keep talking. Teasing.
Mr. Moon.
Thank you. I do not have 145, but I have several. Last night, on behalf of myself and Mr. Ryan McLaughlin, I was at Chantilly High School at ESOL Global Awareness Technology Project. I fully understand that Mr. Ryan McLaughlin was stuck in traffic on Route 7 and Route 123. I didn't get there in time to actually see the project themselves because I had my own traffic problem on I-66, but got there in time to congratulate all the recipients. Tomorrow evening, if you have nothing else going on in your life, please come to our Fairfax High School Students Fashion Show, 7 o'clock, and Saturday morning I will be at Hayfield. See you all.
Thank you all. Happy Teacher Appreciation Week. Thank you to the staff for your very hard work this week. We appreciate you as well. And I know many of you were teachers prior to doing this, so thank you very much. And with that, our meeting is adjourned.
Quick note reminding everyone who is coming to Relay for Life. No problem. This Relay for Life this Saturday at Langley High School. So far, we have raised $71,000 this year, and that's a cumulative 3-year total of around $250,000. So please drop by next Saturday, the 16th, at Cooper Middle School.
Well, the first thing I wanted to do was absolutely positively thank our safety and security folks. They did an awesome job.